Commissioner of
Community mental health.
Community Mental Health, and Marlene Canopy, seen in many guises. So thank you, guys. So what are you imagining, Marlene?
Well, we have 10 minutes, so we're going right to Michael Orr.
Okay, great. What are you imagining, Michael Orr?
Well, first of all, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, town board members and village administrator for this opportunity, really to share what our mental health wellness committee has been up to for the past several months. Under the leadership, of course, of Marlene and Legislator Kunzio and Dr. Damien Harris-Madden, who's a resident of Pleasantville, who used to work for the county and is
And now
now
it bumped up to the state, right?
Yes, she's the
Yes.
state LCFS commissioner
Yeah.
now. We've been exploring opportunities really to promote mental health and mental wellness for our community. And just as you know, as physical health is important, so is the mental health and wellness of our residents. Obviously, even unfortunately, before the pandemic, many of our residents struggle with depression, anxiety, substance misuse disorder. And since the pandemic, we've seen an increase in our young people, seniors, all of our families and neighbors struggling with anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. So really the goal is to really promote mental wellness within our community, to provide training to various stakeholder groups. I put together, which I've shared with you, as commissioner of our Department of Community Mental Health, we have responsibility for the public mental health, substance use, and developmental intellectual disability system. And part of that includes building awareness, providing access to treatment and support. And one of the things that I'm most proud of our title of our department is community mental health. And it's important that we all have a role in promoting mental health and wellness, including our families, our schools, our businesses, our workplace, and also our community and faith-based leaders. So what we propose to do, as May is Mental Health Awareness Month, is to explore opportunities to provide training and wellness events for the community. That could be an existing community fair that you may have to really kind of promote wellness, just have some information available, but also do specific training. For example, for our police department throughout Westchester and Pleasantville, we do crisis intervention training on a regular basis. We also have what's called mental health first aid training, which is sort of the CPR of mental health that we do for parents, for schools. And as you can see in the list, there's also training for workplace, for veterans that we do, for seniors. So it really helps people to understand the language, how to support each other, but if someone is in need of help, how to support, start the dialogue, and then connect them to supports. So part of our goal and responsibility was to also share what resources are available in this community or throughout the county. So it's really kind of doing a mental wellness and health, mental wellness kind of initiative for the community.
What? You're throwing it at me after all of that. So I think for us, we're taking parts. I don't know if you all know, so I've been an advocate for the neurodivergent community here in Pleasantville. And so it's sort of like meeting with that, you know, the community and, you know, making sure, I mean, there are all of these available resources from Michael Orr's office and no one knows about them. And so we just want to let them know, okay, this is, you know, if this happens, this is the resource, this is the support. And, you know, we'd like to tap into working with the senior center just because I think they're the most vulnerable, you know, and when there's an emergency, you know, they don't necessarily know if they're alone, you know, what support is available for them. And so that, you know, we're just going to take parts for the obvious reason for Margaret. You know, her purview is emergency services, so it'd be the police, fire department, and the ambulance corps. And so what is available for them? So we're just sort of, the effort is really trying to take a lot of what already exists. And I was just, you know, I attended a meeting where, you know, Michael just went through all of the services and I said, I didn't know this. And like, this is available. I didn't know this. And so, I mean, I think I'm pretty tapped in. So if I didn't know, I thought, you know, let's just, you know, kind of hold, I don't know what you would call these things. What would you call the town halls or meetings of, you know, just scheduling something at the senior center and having them ask us various questions and bringing information. And, so we're just kind of hoping that this is not, knock over your head, it's just saying, okay, this is what we have.
Yeah, just add all these trainings and resources are no cost. The county provides them. We have grants. So it's really just to support our residents and the various stakeholders within the town and city.
Is the Pleasantville School District, I see some of these things have been involved.
Yes.
Have they been involved? with
Yes, the Pleasantville School District has been involved with our co-occurring disorder awareness. We do a summit each year. They're part of the code activities. They have done mental health first aid for students. So the schools are in a good position and quite active for a lot of these services
Mhm.
and training.
And the faith-based piece of it, have any houses of worship in Pleasantville been involved?
Yeah, we started this initiative in 2020, and we have over 90 faith-based leaders who really are being trained to understand the vocabulary and whether it's through religious or other faith institutes to be able to support residents. We haven't been able to engage Pleasantville faith-based houses of worship as much.
Yeah.
There's actually going to be a journal news story talking about what we've done so far, the different communities where we do the soul shop training. So we hope to develop relationships and engage with faith-based.
And we could encourage that.
We would love
Yes,
that. We
and
appreciate
We'd be
that.
happy to do that. So, as Marlene already said, the senior community obviously is a piece of this, and we have a senior center. So how would that, when we have staff there, would they be the ones that we should get engaged with this? More so than for example, we have a senior resident, housing
Mhm.
with 24 apartments, and certainly have had folks there with various kinds of periods of depression and the like.
Yeah.
That is managed for us by A-Home. Are they involved?
Yeah, they're part of our service system, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, usually what we like to do is get a sense of what they've already done. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, duplicate, kind of get
Yeah.
a sense of what they see as some of the challenges. I also oversee all the opioid response and suicide prevention for the county. And seniors is we see many seniors who struggle with opioid overdose, completed suicides. So we want to make sure that the staff are trained, aware of what to look for, how to support our seniors. But if there's any extra training we can do for the seniors, just on their own mental health, wellness, prescription medications, what to be aware of, we're happy to do some of those free kind of in-house trainings and awareness events as well. And we target them for seniors.
sorry, that'd be great to do with the seniors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so quite a range of services you guys have put together here. So what are the action items for us? Clearly, we can reach out, and I'm happy to do that to the faith-based group and try to get some of those people engaged. And get our senior program engaged. The schools were already rocking and rolling.
Yep.
Our police department is obviously involved. Who else? Is there any other?
Or libraries, any have
Yeah.
you contacted, or
Or
any information put out like at local libraries?
I'm sorry.
Or is there any information put out at local libraries?
We would love to share that information and
Sometimes there's a lot of pamphlets
resources.
that are sort of
Yeah.
at the front.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, just getting the information out. We also do a lot of work with businesses. There's actually going to be a training for a small and middle-sized business at Caramore about mental health in the workplace and looking at productivity and how to support the workplace. It's something that many businesses didn't talk about until the pandemic. So any kind of training awareness programs, we're happy to do that as well.
And how are businesses made aware of that? Should we be pitching that through our Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah, usually to the Chamber of
Yeah,
Commerce, just to know that there's a service or resources out there. Some may want to participate in training, others just may want the resource material that they have just for their own awareness and education. Marlene, sorry.
No, I'm just pointing at Paul because he's the vice president.
Yes,
Mhm.
so if anything, if any of this information can get out to me, I can get it to all of our businesses. We do a e-blast usually on Fridays, so any kind of program do you already have it scheduled for when it's gonna be?
No, we schedule them for whatever community or stakeholders would like the training.
Okay, you said there's one in Caramore?
They're doing a workshop up there coming up. Yeah, I can
Do you know
definitely
when that
share that. It's in May. It's coming
Yeah,
up.
I mean, if we'll get it out there and anyone that can make it, but I think those are great kind of services, because I think people are always looking for anything that can help, and obviously if it's provided by someone else that they don't have to pay for extra to get their employees to go or themselves. I think it's a great thing.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
So
Bye,
the
Alex
point- the
Court.
point of like, sort of creating the small group, and it's intentional for it to be a small group. We want to be effective in, all the different parts.
Yeah.
We want to address, but, we want to tailor it or custom it to Pleasantville and what Pleasantville needs. And so, the hope is to have like different satellites of, maybe in Scarsdale, or because Scarsdale has different, sort of needs, and so does Irvington, and so this is really a pilot, and, we're just waiting for a green light, and we'd like to be very effective at sort of addressing various issues.
Yeah, there's so much stigma around mental health and mental
Yeah.
wellness, and a lot of people suffering in silence. So we want to let people be able to get information, to get the support they need. One interesting data point is that the time someone experiences a mental health symptom to the time they actually get help is 10 years. So if you imagine if it was a physical health condition like cancer or broken leg, you wouldn't wait 10 years to get help. So we're trying to just build awareness, get people to talk about it if they're not feeling well, and know that support is out there. And there's no better place to start than in the local community. So that's where we really wanted to be, as you said, on the ground, in a community where they get most of their
Yeah.
support. So
And just, be able to have a face recognition and access us and, give out our information so that, if someone reaches out to you or to me, that we know where to go.
What is our event called? The Walk of Light that we have that's,
So that's the DTH Foundation.
oh, okay. All right, I'm just curious. I know that's very.
Walking to the light.
It's primarily a fundraising effort.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just wanted to try to.
yeah, and I do that every year as well.
Oh, okay.
Coming up soon.
I just know it's like very like, there's a lot of pride in Pleasantville
Yeah,
about it. So
absolutely. It's a suicide prevention.
So related, how are the crisis teams that support police around the county working out? I mean, that's a great program.
Yeah, we've been in existence for 2-3 years. We wanted to make it local rather than a centralized county response. And as you guys know, the culture of every community in PD is a little bit different. And that's what we wanted. We wanted to reflect the needs. We just did our first quarter report. They're getting a lot of contacts, a lot of preventing hospitalizations or police time. I think the best benefits is once the police, if they have to get involved, they can just hand it off to the mobile crisis team. So all that time police have been spending transporting to a hospital or dealing with benefits, the teams are now currently doing that. But I'm definitely happy to send you some of the data as well and some of the outcomes.
Great.
And I hear the police chief in Pleasantville is very happy. That's what I heard as of last week. So they're happy, we're happy. So
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I mean, it's such an important thing. So, well, this is a great menu of stuff. So we've got a few action items to
Yep.
support Marlene and her local effort and
Yep.
try to make sure we take advantage of this wide range of stuff you have put together. So
thank you. Thank you for your time. Really
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
it.
quite clear that the Lifetime Achievement Award is well deserved.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you.
There's no
Still got a couple
great.
years left, but.
Yeah, don't go anywhere.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Michael.
Appreciate it.
And thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
I'm late.
Okay. All right, next up, tree ordinance, folks, come on up.
Very much.
All right.
Post-consumer content, don't worry, it's all recycled.
Yeah.
Go next to you.
There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes, nice to meet you. Pleasure to meet you.
You're kidding.
Mike, how are you? Yes, thank you. Yeah, I was like, I feel like we know each other. No, yeah, it goes way back. Nice to see you. Yeah. Excellent. Stay tuned. Thank you. I don't know, I'm looking at this. I know.
Well,
Yeah.
hedonic valuation model.
Do you want to describe a little bit what you've handed? to
Yeah,
us?
so we can describe, I mean, we'll briefly go through, but the overall, the first page in the order, it talks about just about, increasing and maintaining property values is really, based on maintaining, increasing, tree canopy or urban forest. So that's what the first article, that we talked about.
And that would be
There's a
kind of a
little-
talking point to encourage people, is that?
Yes, to encourage
I
people
see.
to maintain.
Yes.
So that,
We also want to maintain our own property value.
yes, so that
It'd be
goes without
problematic
saying.
if the village board were seeking to harm property.
No, I don't think so.
So, and then the next, just goes into Westchester County, and so we happen to have, Dr. Lyman, who happens to be a Pleasantville resident. This is right up his alley, this is his specialty, what he does professionally. So he's able to pull Westchester County and show the canopy cover. And so you can see it's mostly red, which is clearly a decline. And so this is between 2011 and 2021. So overall, the county is not doing very well. And so you might be thinking, well, maybe Pleasantville is doing better. So then if we go to page 3, there's a couple of different data points. I guess probably the easiest thing to pick up is the third set of data on the right, which just shows negative 7% decline from 2012 to 2020. So about 8 years or 9 years. So we are losing a decent percentage of tree canopy cover. And the term just tree canopy, it's easier from I mean, Dr. Ryman can explain, but to summarize, it's very easy to capture from satellite pictures, the tree coverage with canopy cover. So they probably pull the data at the same time each year versus looking like, X trees or how many trees were cut down. They go based on canopy cover, and it gives a good overall way to characterize how overall the forest is doing.
So,
Andy, can you explain a little bit more how to read this map?
Yeah, so what we do, like Ben indicated, we use images from satellites. And there's an organization, it's a joint partnership between NASA and the USGS. They use this satellite imagery to put together different products about what's happening at the Earth's surface. One of them is canopy cover. So at a resolution where they break down the entire US into squares that are about 100 feet on the side, they are quantifying the percent of that little pixel that is covered with tree canopy. So we use those data, we applied it to Westchester and looked at changes in tree canopy cover over time. These data sets go back to 2011. And so on this map, areas in different shades of green show places where canopy cover is increased, and areas in red show places where canopy cover has declined over time. And when we talk about canopy cover, that can be trees in a forest, it could be trees in parks, it could be trees along our streets, and it could be trees in our yards. It's sort of like indiscriminately just looks at where there's tree cover. And so what our work has shown is that every municipality in Westchester is experiencing declines in canopy cover, and Pleasantville is certainly in that. And so this map just helps you to kind of visualize. I didn't have the chance to zoom in just to Pleasantville, but you can kind of visualize where within the town it's happening. And in Pleasantville, it's pretty diffuse. It's not like one specific location where we lost like 10 acres of forest and that's what's controlling it. It's kind of spread throughout the town.
So, and it's calculated in terms of percentages, right? So,
Percent of every like 100 by 100 foot sort of.
okay.
so that your first chart, that's acres, right?
Yep.
Would suggest that in that 2011 to roughly 10-year period, that something round figures like 55, 60 acres of
Yep.
trees were lost.
Yep.
So just thinking sort of anecdotally, where is that, right? Since in that time period, there certainly were quite a few trees lost when the Toll Brothers project was
Yep.
done. But that doesn't come anywhere near 55, 60
That's right.
acres. The rest
So
of it
and
is
you
all
can-
onesie, twosie, do you think?
I think Pleasantville doesn't have a lot of forest cover. Like if you look at some of the towns in northern Westchester,
Yeah.
a lot of that loss is from forest.
Right.
Right, Pleasantville, we don't have much forest, so a lot of that loss, Toll Brothers certainly part of it. But it's trees coming down in people's yards, along our streets, things like that is probably a lot of it. We haven't have the resources yet to start to dive into like what exactly the drivers of loss are. Where we are now is we can just quantify where the loss has occurred.
It's just interesting to connect that to 55 or 60 acres, the equivalent of the loss of 55 or 60 acres of trees is a bigger number than I would have expected, just knowing what, or thinking I know.
Yep.
Which
It's like
perhaps,
5 to 7 acres a year is what that works out to. And so, yeah, so anytime like a big old tree comes down, that's, you know, a sizable area, and you multiply that up across the size of the.
so the satellite is counting essentially the entire spread of the tree.
Yep, yeah, it's not the
Right.
individual trees, like
The crown.
the spread of the ground.
So a
Right.
big tree comes down and it has a bit bigger impact than a hemlock that was narrow but
Yep.
very tall.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Keep going before we start chiming in here.
No, I mean, that's
Yeah.
a quick overview
Yeah.
of what all,
Yeah, yeah.
all this is showing. Yeah.
So, I'm just going to.
Oh, yeah. So then I was just gonna explain number 4. The 4th page is just talking about, it's double-sided, of course, safe paper.
Yes, it's all post-consumer.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for the 8-point font. That's.
I apologize. I literally probably spent more time trying to get it larger because I know people's eyes.
Come on, I'm the youngest guy on the board and I'm having trouble with it.
We should have brought magnifying glasses. I'm sorry. But yeah, so these are municipalities that have ordinances currently, tree ordinances. And so the canopy, we converted over to trees. And so we highlight, column A, the first column, we, classify, but we list the town or the village. And then going across, it just indicates who inputted it. And then DBH. DBH stands for, diameter at breast height. And that means at 4.5 feet, if you measure a tree, that's the diameter. So, I guess there's an industry standard. Professor Ryman can explain why, but at 4.5 feet, that's where you measure the tree. And at that point, that's where everyone decides, like, what are you going to do at that height? So it just makes it universally, people aren't measuring at the base or 10 feet, 4.5 feet. So if you look down, you'll see there are different numbers. Some are, greater than 6 dBH. So that'd be diameter of the tree at 4.5 feet in height. And so there's a variety of ordinances. Some of them are, it varies. I would say it can be, 3 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches. Those are typically the most common. And we list out the municipality, whether or not there are any species specific. Some towns and villages have species specific because they're invasive species. So they're trying to figure out. But when it comes to Westchester County, they're just concerned, Western. But when they're talking about canopy cover, they highlight all the trees. They're not specifying, is it invasive or is it not? So, and then the additional column, just number of trees that can be removed. And that is just having a permit. So some places you submit a permit, and a permit doesn't mean you can or cannot. Permit just means that you're filing, saying, I want to take this tree down. And then they have number of max trees, number of trees per permit, and that again varies per municipality. The replanting rules, so it gets into, what are the rules regarding replanting? Some places do a 2-for-1, some places do 1-for-1, some do it based on the DBH, so the size of a tree. So if you cut down, let's say, a huge tree that's 30 diameters, it probably doesn't make sense to replant one tree. And so these are the things that we discussed as a committee. We link to the E-code so we can get you electronically if you want to take a look. Very conveniently, all these municipalities are using the same E-code product. So that's pretty, except I think Tarrytown. And then also the permit costs. So typically there was a permit cost associated with that. And again, it varied on, the number of trees. The tree bank fund, and this had to do with, in essence, trying to incentivize replanting. So this is what Professor Ryman, kind of harped upon the importance to our group, is we really need to focus on replanting, not just prevention, because the canopy is reducing. And so you can't just stop everyone. We really need people to start planting more and more trees. So figuring out how do we incentivize that on, public, private, and also commercial spaces. And so there's various ways to go about having a fund. Some places, if you plant a tree, you don't need to put it into the fund. So there were a lot of different approaches regarding how to slice and dice it. And then penalties, just regarding trying to discourage. So we want people to submit the permit. Again, the permit doesn't mean you can't cut down, but if someone doesn't submit the permit, because we're trying to, figure out and control and regulate. But in essence, you have to have some penalty, and the penalty obviously has to be more costly to try to discourage folks from cutting down trees illegally. Typically the cutting down trees would, vary based on the number of trees, the size of the trees, first, second offense, those sorts of things. So we looked at all the different municipalities, and you can see there's a lot in Westchester County. And then we, in essence, discussed, negotiated, argued, and we came up with what we thought was an appropriate set of recommendations. So.
I add one thing, because
Go for it.
so I think I appreciate all the handouts and everything, but one thing that you haven't had the time to state briefly is why we want to maintain trees in the first place. And I won't go through the whole litany, but one of the things that really jumped out to me in the conversations that we've had is the impact of climate change and the way that having a healthy tree canopy can serve to mitigate that to some degree. So Andy, one of the things that he works on is the effect of trees, or the absence of trees, on weather fluctuations. Is that an accurate way of describing it?
Thank you.
And then flooding is another big issue. So I just, and you guys can add to that. I won't. But also, since I'm talking, Ben described briefly what it was like being in the committee, and what we discovered is that there are very many variables that comes up, and that putting together a tree ordinance turns out to be way more complicated than you would think it is. So I think one thing that might be helpful for everybody else on the board is not necessarily talk about all the variables, but talk about some of the different angles that we've considered in terms of regulating trees, or alternatively trying to encourage maintaining a tree health canopy. So for instance, the buffer is one of the things that Helen talked about, but maybe kind of going through some of these points, I feel like would be helpful.
Right, so before we do that though, I think we should probably do a quick introduction, because Yemi's new to the board and you won't know anyone else except Andy.
That's a good point.
Mike Inglis again.
Mura, and
That's Sarah.
and we are a subset of the CAC. There are about another 4 or 5 members. Ben's not actually on the CAC, although maybe I'll twist his arm. And we've been doing this for over 2 years, and this is the second time in 10 years we've tried to put a reasonable tree ordinance together. The first time Trustee Steve Lord spearheaded that. So here we are again, and we're very interested in not just maintaining the canopy we have, but also increasing it to
Regaining it.
Yeah.
Regaining,
Right, to make up for what.
just say regaining and not increasing. Right, because then it's an easier sell, we're gaining what we lost
Okay.
already.
Regaining. Here we are with the branding.
I mean, we're benefiting now from the decision
Occupational
people made 50, 100 years ago to plant trees.
Yes.
And it's like our responsibility to make sure that we keep that.
One thing that I really
Yeah.
notice is that street trees, a lot of them are getting older.
Yeah,
And I think we need to have a plan in place going forward. Not only through the permitting process, to document what's actually happening on a minute level in the village by getting a permit, but actually then to have a plan to replant the street trees, which we're going to lose because of age.
I mean, I can tell you, it was about 20 years ago, we planted a lot of street trees
We did.
between
Yeah.
here and say Romer. And had that not been done, it'd be a very different world right now.
It would be. Yeah.
But there was quite a bit of controversy about putting them between the curb and sidewalk, and they've done pretty well.
Yeah.
So that said, it's interesting, the dust up, several dust ups associated with Clark Street. Clark Street happens to be a street with very few street trees.
Right.
Right, very few, so,
And the ones that are there are quite old.
yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, part of that is
That's a road
diversification
end, yeah.
of species and diversification of age, right? That's what we want.
Right, I was on a college
Right.
campus where this line of trees had been planted 130 years earlier. And then they all died at the same time. It was really devastating to the community because it was a
Right.
big part of the identity of the
Yeah.
school. So I think diversification of age is really important.
And of
Age and
species too, because
Age
so
and
many of the
species,
native
yes.
trees are coming under, trees of all kinds come under attack now with all the different pests and stuff that come in, so. you
So
know,
two things. One is, I'm guessing a very big percentage of loss of tree canopy in the charts you show in Pleasantville. A very significant piece of it is from Con Ed's work on the aqueduct, where over the last 10 years, they have taken a dramatically more aggressive approach to keeping trees away from the high tension wires, taking down things that seem just, to me, inconceivable that they would be a risk, but whatever. You know, I can, as Helen knows extraordinarily well, they came through, say, up in the area by the pool, and it is a radically different landscape than it was prior to that. So that said, we're never going to get control over the utilities. You've already made reference to that. So the other thing that feeds into this, at least in some way, is, as you likely have read, the state and the county have identified a very severe shortage in new housing units. And the governor has the goal of 800,000 new housing units being built in the coming decade. And last year had a pretty aggressive proposal to override local zoning to allow that to happen. But part and parcel to that is there is a very significant argument that communities like ours have zoning and things like tree ordinances specifically to maintain a certain environment and high property values, and to, again, depending on where you come in the argument of the political spectrum, some would say it is specifically designed to keep people out. So those two things are a little, you know, there's obviously
I don't think they have to be opposed though, Peter. I think they can actually work together. If you create ordinances in the new construction zone where you cluster more densely than perhaps you would have allowed in order to preserve canopy.
Totally get that,
Yeah.
but that entails disrupting single family zoning. Right? We have obviously in the downtown district.
Yeah.
Multifamily housing. But we don't have multifamily housing in lots of other places.
Right.
And if we were to allow multifamily housing, the idea of doing it in a clustered, more dense way and preserving a wider area is hard to do because they're already broken up into plots with houses on them. And wouldn't likely happen anytime soon, but also is a fraught discussion, to be sure.
But as you pointed out, Peter, I mean, the governor's goal was to increase the housing in New York State by 10%. We've already accomplished that in Pleasantville, right? And it seems like.
It does not, however, appear that we're likely to get credit for that.
That-
Believe me,
that
I'm
is
beating
true.
that drum.
I know. But, and it seems like where the opportunity for that has existed, not just geographically, but in terms of where the market is more in the downtown area, which is less likely to have an impact on.
Yeah, but I can tell you,
Sorry.
I just bring it up, for example, the Regional Plan Association, which is one of the agencies that has been driving the conversation regionally about planning, and also in some cases about transportation, about eco issues, has a very long and very detailed planning study that essentially says none of this will be fixed without disrupting single family zoning. So, and what that could mean, just for example, if what the governor had proposed a year ago were to have been approved, that would have created an incentive to assemble a series of houses, knock them all down, and build a very dense project that, by the governor's proposal, could not be stopped based on concern about parking, as you, for example, no parking would be required. So,
What do you mean by assemble a group of houses? You mean by eminent domain or something
No.
else?
just, I mean,
You just keep buying them when they're next to each other.
well, it would have created an environment, could have created an environment where there would be an incentive to buy a whole bunch of houses in a row, including in a neighborhood that hadn't changed in significant ways in a century, to assemble a big enough parcel, knock them all down and build a very dense development. So again, that isn't, I think, what's coming down the pike. There's plenty of pushback about that. But the overall issue is not going to go away and is going to come back in a very significant way. And there would be, the reason I bring it up is there would be folks that would say ordinances of this kind are depending on the stridency of the view of the speaker, either intended or the unintended consequence is to stop those changes.
But
Yeah.
one thing to,
Yeah, I would focus on, I would just recommend we proceed with the recommendations that are going down before I don't want to get too sidetracked. I understand what the mayor is saying, that's important, but we should really express, I'm just concerned that we're not fine. That's.
Right.
I mean, we
All
can.
right. Yeah, go.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go for it, go for it.
very quick point.
Yes.
I think, so in Manhattan, for example, the residential communities with the highest canopy cover are nicer properties, so public housing. So this idea that increasing canopy cover, trying to maintain canopy cover is somehow exclusive or diametrically opposed to affordable housing, there's lots of examples that fly in the face of that. It's the planning part that is problematic. It's not whether or not it's like exclusive or otherwise.
But I mean, that
You can
goes
have
to
both.
Michael's point, which is if you revise zoning to say you can cluster dense housing, as is the case in the New York City housing project, around a sort of park space or something of the sort, you can have your cake and eat it too, right? That's the argument. But you cannot have that without a community that's willing to accept dense housing in places that hasn't existed before, right?
Which maybe with,
But that might be beyond our
maybe
remit.
in the
Yeah.
future. So,
It is, I'm not landing it on your plate other than to say it's an issue that is coming to us in various ways.
well, the one piece I feel like it would be useful for the rest of the board to know is that one of the things that we discussed is whether there should be a piece of, tree related, code that was in the zoning code that would apply specifically to new development as opposed to the regulation of existing properties, where houses and trees and stuff, something already exists. So, if you think about something like, there aren't many properties even that it would apply to in Pleasantville. But if there's a large piece of property that has, for instance, a fair amount of tree canopy in it, whether we might want to consider anticipating those sort of circumstances so that you couldn't just clear cut those areas. So just to let you know that was part of.
So
the
might that
discussion.
mean somebody has a property that is big enough, a side lot, so to speak, a double width lot, big enough to subdivide to a zoning compliant second home,
Mhm.
but it's got a bunch of trees on it? What would happen in that scenario?
Well,
I think it's more for like multiple house things in zoning as opposed to a single house.
I'm not sure if that's true though, because that would be a new lot, right? So what Peter's talking about, so.
Which happens every year.
So
Yeah.
the code, I think, would apply in that case because it would be new development essentially. It would be a space that has no existing structure essentially. So Susan Favati is the one who would probably be able to
Yeah.
give a more nuanced answer to that question. But, one of the things that we explored is, could we require maintaining a certain percentage of canopy, for instance, so that, they're allowed to cut down a certain amount of trees. So that
Again,
the
by
property
clustering,
will
right?
not- Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, is the model for this sort of the carbon cap marketplace? Like, in other words, there are times when you're gonna have to cut things down to do development, but then you should be paying in so that we can replace it in another place within the village, but the only trick is we have to have those identified, the opportunities identified. And at some point, if somebody's taking down a lot of trees, the price might have to be steeper because it may suggest we have to either acquire or protect land.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, why don't we jump into this, because we,
That's what I was gonna say.
yeah, we start, we're
I
like
needed to
answering,
know
you're
what-
asking lots of great questions.
Okay, yes,
And
go for it.
we touch upon a lot of them, so why don't we, do you wanna go through what we had, the consensus just
Well,
regarding?
this is very,
Okay.
this is a very bird's eye view of it, really, what
Okay.
we've got here. So one of the things to, well, a couple of things. One is if we have a tree replanting plan, there needs to be money allocated to that. One of the things we thought is we might have to generate that by
A fee.
people contributing to that fund if they weren't replanting on their property. If they were to replant on their property, as Ben said earlier, there would be a number of trees per diameter
Tree removal.
ranges. So like a tree at 6 inches would require one tree. A tree that was 12 inches would require 2 trees to replace, and so on.
Either replace on site or pay into a fund.
Right, and that the cost of trees has gone up considerably, and when we've done a lot of research in looking how much that costs, you know, a teeny little tree from a nursery, which I'm in favor of planting skinnier trees. Andy's a proponent of skinnier trees. Still about $100, $150, and then a 2-inch tree is $250 or so. So these aren't going to just, you know, land on Pleasantville's property and say, here you go. So we wanted to find money for 2 things. One is to fund this tree replanting if an owner wasn't doing it. And the other thing would be to also help fund an arborist to make sure all of this was working properly.
Right.
So these are things we'd like to get some feedback on. Is that a sensible thing to do? It would be an arborist on hourly on a retainer. We have one now that the Parks and Rec use when somebody says a street tree is having some difficulty, they hire an arborist, who as far as I know is not associated with a tree removal company, which makes it an unbiased judgment. These kinds of things are important to allow this program to cause trees to be planted. So it might seem a bit onerous to ask a homeowner to put 2, 3, 4 trees on their property. And indeed, you know, 50 years from now, those trees might be too much for that property size. So there has to be some figuring out how do we make this sensible and workable, but maintain that tree canopy. And he's got lots of statistics that point to the biggest way that tree canopy is preserved is in municipalities that have tree planting programs, which we do. We have street tree program that's pretty general, and then we have the 50 tree program, which is for homeowners who want a tree planted in the front of their yard so that everybody gets to enjoy it. So, and these seem to be things without a known necessarily a budget or a number of trees, and we need to, as you said earlier, formalize that. So we have ideas to have a tree inventory, which we mentioned when we last came before you. We had started a tree inventory with a young man who's now on the CAC, Will Serlin. But the software we're using is not currently functioning. And Ben and I met with Mike Newman and Mario Sansota for a presentation by, I think it was iPlanet. Is that what it is?
Yep, the Parks and Rec, the folks.
The software that actually is like an inventory software and work order software and so on. There are all different ways to do this, but it would be great for the village, Parks and Rec, the CAC to all have a picture of what do we have? Is it going up? Is it going down? How can we pay attention to keep track of what's been removed and what's been planted? So many of these things all require money. So we don't want to present an ordinance that's not financially feasible. But neither do we want to be in a position where the ordinance is just saying, oh, you cut 5 trees down? Okay. You know, it's just, we need to find a way to fund planting. So we'd like you to think about any ideas you have for that.
Can I just ask a quick question? In some of the other programs, I guess with the other towns or villages, have you seen one or the other be more successful? I mean, like they're somewhat similar, some are larger than others, but just, I mean, it's hard to find Pleasantville. I'm like, well, what are the green areas that did increase? Like, and where are they actually? I was like, what did they do right? And like, how do we, or like there are some green bits there.
There are some green.
Yeah, okay. I was like, where are those? Like,
Yeah, I mean, they exist scattered throughout the county, as well,
Yeah.
where people planted some trees and they finally got big enough for us to see it on the
Interesting.
satellite.
okay, cool.
I think the one thing that we've seen with a couple of municipalities is when they rolled out, the program, the one thing that they didn't factor in a large enough number was the penalty. So the penalty was too low, they realized it, and then they adjusted the ordinance to increase that cost. But I don't recall seeing anything where like, hey, they realized they were regulating 3-inch deviate, like the DVH wrong. I don't remember seeing that.
But have
or
you
the number of
seen,
trees?
are there examples that you have of these municipalities being successful in either defending or increasing the tree cover? And who would that be?
Well, I
Like, if
think
anything,
across the county, it's going down, right?
The best that we've been able to figure out so far, and now we're using like fancy machine learning stuff to better figure this out, because no two ordinances are like exact replicates of one another, but the best we can figure out is everyone's losing canopy cover. The municipalities that have a good tree planting incentive program and require permits to cut trees down are losing canopy cover at a slower rate than everybody else. And one of the tricky things is if a municipality enacted an ordinance a few years ago, it could be 5-10 years before you can like really start to see the benefits of it. So it's not like it gets enacted and you see the results the next day. And so, one argument for requiring a permit is that it helps the village to figure out where are we losing trees, and if we're trying to improve an ordinance moving forward, you'll actually have data specific for Pleasantville to be able to better address that. Like, if you know, like where they're coming down, but also why, right? The permit would require a reason.
So we're basically trying to address the problem of the commons, meaning when I cut a tree down, I'm consuming a resource that has had a benefit for me and my neighbors, but I'm consuming it individually for my own hedonic enjoyment or whatever reason to create more space, et cetera. And the problem has been that people, with all the problems in the commons from roads to whatever, people do not individually solve them. They only get solved collectively, right? But also, it seems to me what you're saying is that we need collective management to be able to do this, because I can easily see, saying there's a permit fee and there's a fee for tree you don't replant, and people saying, yes, I've replanted a tree, trust me, or here's a picture, and that not having any discernible impact.
And that's why we want the arborists.
Right. And it also makes sense because one of my biggest, so I sort of think that we want to weight this so that the folks who are creating the greatest impact are, taking the greatest burden, which I would assume would be developers, sub-developers, et cetera, people who are taking large numbers of trees down. So that it's not just a sliding scale, but it may be a little bit more of a logarithmic scale in terms of the cost, because those are going to be the ones that are very hard for us to recover from, right?
Yeah, so one of the things that Helen had referenced was, it was based on the diameter of the tree. So the smaller the tree, the less, let's say, benefit. So the larger tree, there would be more trees that would have to get replanted.
Right.
And the other thing that we were proposing is right now the 50-50 is for the front yards, and street trees is just street trees. What we were proposing is we don't care where the tree is planted. So 50-50 has to be in the front.
Right.
The tree planting as long as it's on village, like within the village municipality, if it's in the backyard, if it's inside, who cares? It's a tree.
But
It's
you
generating.
you need some kind of inspection or verification to.
Right,
Yeah.
well, we had an idea of having an arborist, visit
Right,
year one and year
Year
three.
three, just to
Right.
check that the tree was.
And so that's what part of the permit was gonna pay for. We had gotten pricing to get an arborist to come in, monthly or bi-monthly.
right.
And then in essence, they would know, here are the 6 trees that are on the permit. They would review the trees and then they'd be like, okay, approved. And there were scenarios where if there's an emergency, you could take down the tree. If there are diseases, there's no like replanting required. So we had all that criteria as
So
well.
when you looked at this and considering the rate of tree cover loss, how many hours of an arborist time were you believing that you would need every year?
Yeah, but no, I mean, I think we don't.
Because there's a way to get to
Yeah.
that, right? Just mathematically.
We asked
Yeah,
Mario
it's
that.
probably like, an arborist to come over here and check out one tree is,
A
the
lot more.
per tree
Yeah.
cost is gonna be more.
No, I'm
than
just
if
saying, like,
they were
it seems
yeah.
to me like pretty soon you're gonna have an arborist on staff, and I'm just wondering where you reach.
No,
that.
I
don't
think
think
it's a
that's
little
the
bit
case.
less than that. I don't think once, the only reason to do it more than once a month is in the planting season.
But how many trees are there in Pleasantville?
I don't know, thousands.
No, but that was why the idea of like clustering it, like, for example, that, the inspection that would happen, in the 1 year and 3 year frame, they would do all of the trees at once, things like that.
Right, but it's a mile square, right, or something like that?
Yeah, but they were only inspecting what's on the permit. So when someone says they were gonna cut down a tree, then they would, check that.
But the arborist is also gonna need to, like, if we have, as we thin out these areas, I'm assuming that trees don't recover the way that they would in a forest when something gets struck by lightning, it comes down, it sustains new trees, et cetera. It's just a natural cycle, but does that happen in the suburbs? If people lose trees to natural causes, do they spring back up, or?
I
do
mean,
we have to
invasive
supervise?
maples is popping up all over the place.
All over.
I think usually those compromised trees, people have someone come in and cut.
Yeah,
I mean, the other ask was the tree inventory, and that's something that Parks and Rec would find helpful. So when there was a problem with the tree, it would go into the database, and then in theory, they could track it. So resident calls up, they report a tree, goes in the tree database inventory, and then it's maintained in there. So then any trouble tickets or issues with that tree, it becomes trackable. So that was a more transparent approach for
Right.
everyone.
And
just
they'd only be, talking about trees on public right of way or
Public right
public
of way,
property.
yeah.
And then the rest of the inventory would be done by volunteers, just as
Into the same software?
yes, ideally, because then it's one database.
And just one more question. When we have, one of the biggest places that we've had people getting upset about trees is when a developer has a plan and a permit, and a certain number of trees are to get taken down, and they take more down, or the ones that get taken down are not the ones that, were specified, et cetera. How do you plan to address that?
Well, firstly, there should be, I think we're all learning, there should be a little bit more oversight of anywhere where there's more than one tree coming down. There may be
Yeah,
some
I agree with
minimum
That part of
number.
it is comparatively easy.
And then-
Legal counsel suggests we
But-
have quite a few limitations on what we can do as far as a punitive fee.
So we
So better
wondered
to stop
whether you
before
would
they
just
come.
issue a stop work order and then take your time over permitting
Yeah.
the work
and, of
starting
course,
again. I don't know how that works with the legal.
yeah,
I mean, why don't we just talk about the penalties that we had touched upon and the replanting?
Yeah, so we gotta wind this up.
Yeah.
I think it's been a very fruitful conversation. I thank you for that, but. Quickly go for it.
Yeah, so I mean,
The actual cost of the penalties, I mean, these are very negotiable, so I don't.
yeah, but I'm just ballpark what we're talking about. And then in essence, we were just trying to get feedback from the board, just so we know, like, as we narrow this down, because we've been working with, was it BFJ? So just so we don't spend more time with them, so that we were in essence going the direction that you'd like.
So the suggestion was, the other thing we didn't really talk about is something Newcastle does, the town next to us, is they have a buffer zone, which is just for trees around on the perimeter of any property, all sides of the property. And the tree rules are a little bit different in those, in that the smallest DBH that you can cut down the largest DBH you can cut down without a permit is smaller, like 4 inches, so that you can maintain this sort of a fence, as it were, a natural fence between you and your neighbor. Or you could presumably have an agreement with your neighbor, and you could come to the permitting authority and say, we both want this tree down. But it makes good neighbors if you have a tree and you cut it down and your neighbor's upset, whatever. And I think there's a lot of things that go on in the village, which is where, in anywhere, where an arborist or a tree company comes and they taking one tree down, they say, oh, well, we're at it, we'll take that one down as well. It'll be cheaper for us to do it now than if we come back. And one of the things is if you have to replant trees, there's a cost and a space issue to that. And then if you didn't replant or you chose not to replant, we had suggested $200 per tree. Oh, this is if you didn't actually get a permit. Which are we talking about first?
We were just talking about penalties.
All right, so if you didn't get a tree permit, but it was discovered that you had taken down a tree of 4 inches or between 4, why is this not working? 4 inches or up to 12 inches, it would be $200. And then for above 12, less than 18, it would be $300. Between 12 and 18.
But these are all just
yes,
details.
right. So these are, but it's kind of a sliding scale.
Yeah.
And the one of the things we can't really measure. David, I think you said something that really resonated me, which was there's no remedy to restore a mature tree. You can't just take a tree down and put another one in its place. It has to grow, and it takes a long time. And so the larger a tree, the more effort it takes to get that, all the ecosystem services and the beauty of the tree and the canopy of the tree and the respiration of the tree and the shade of the tree, all of that. And so we even considered that some trees shouldn't be allowed to be cut down if they're a certain size. They have taken so many years to get to that size. It's devastating to just take them down. So the fine for taking a very large tree down would be quite high. That's what we would recommend, but.
Of course, I mean, that gets complicated. A very, very large tree, very, very old tree.
Well,
is
obviously,
likely
it's not,
approaching end of life at some point, right?
Yeah,
Well, there's an carve out anyway for
Yeah.
Right.
disease.
Yeah.
or-
I mean, we can always change it, make it
Yeah, I
based
understand.
on DBH. So
Yeah.
we can say, hey, every 5 DBH, it's 1 more tree. So that way, in theory, a tree that's, 30 DBH is 6 trees. And then you can figure out where to plant them on your property, or if you don't, in essence, you pay into the tree fund. And then we use our tree program, which would then, in essence, fund a tree anywhere in the village. So that was the overall, direction that we were trying to go.
A tree anywhere in the village on public land.
Private.
So we would potentially tell a private homeowner who wanted a tree that they could have it for free out of this fund?
yes, but it would be more like an annual event where we would say we have X number of trees available, who wants one?
Okay, so that's interesting. All right, we need to move on to our next thing, but
Swedish
festival around. We'll dig into this in our minds and we should have you back for sure.
So, and if you have any feedback, you can email us and that way we can work on it in the
Sure.
background, because we're just sort of a little bit treading water because we're not
I
quite sure
understand, yes.
the direction you should take.
Yes.
But I think,
I'll prod. them.
yeah, moving towards like a sheet with just sort of the bullet points of how it would work.
the key
Even if it's
points
just
of the
bullet
ordinance.
Key points,
Yeah,
yeah. would be
okay.
Helpful.
Sure.
I
All
think
right,
for me, I would say this is a great start to get an idea of what other municipalities are doing. And I'm gonna look at all these on one by one. I also think that perhaps a way to also look at it is what approach is gonna help us accomplish what we want in the end, which is by trying to incentivize people to do these programs more instead of punishing them.
Yeah.
It's hard to know which one is gonna be more successful, but maybe that's what we can kind of picture, because I think a lot of people just don't have the information. So I think the majority of people that we want to focus on is people who are uninformed. And we can put this out there and we can really tackle it with really good marketing on it from every angle that we can, where people are very well aware. We do some kind of big event where we show up, look, these are the incentives you're going to get. So that before people aren't informed or looking to make a decision like financially done, they're like, oh, I heard of this program. Because even though the 50/50 program is out there, I feel like a lot of people still don't know.
Yeah.
And I think it's an amazing program that we need to get out there more. And that's also on us as well. But if we can work in a way together to publicize this more, I think it'll be really effective. So I think that's also a way to tackle this because, it is always with these kind of things, it is, trying to infringe on people's liberties and the properties and all that can be difficult, but by incentivizing them can really have a huge impact. So I think this gives me a good idea to see what they're doing and what we can pick from there. But I would say on your end, trying to see what's working better in that aspect and how we can maybe make our program better. And then on our end, maybe we can see if we can get funding to be able to do this better and have a better tree bank or things like that, because that's going to be the thing that will incentivize someone to be like, all right, well, they're going to help me. Because that's always what we get whenever, we have talks about the gas powered leaf blowers. It was always like, well, this is going to cost me more. So people would like just relate cost to infringing their civil liberties and all these things. But if we can help, it's going to only make it easier enough. So thank you for taking the time to really, I see that each one of you took a different one and put it in there. So this is very valuable. So thanks for that.
So one thing about the 50/50 Street Tree program, which is a fantastic website on the Westchester government website about, I think it's listed under invasive trees. I can send you the link. Is the 50/50 tree program is listed on the front page as a program that's working. And we are an example to the rest of the county, which is fantastic. And I should say that Mario has no lack of people asking for 50/50 trees. So if we're going to add to that or any other program, we're going to need to think about some staffing things also. It's a lot of work to plant a tree.
We've hit the limits on the 50/50. It's a timing. So that the tree bank would, in essence, allow us to plant more trees because homeowners would be involved in the process.
Right. And then they wouldn't be, it wouldn't be
And
on
it's
the
free.
village.
Right.
So it's like a win-win.
Right.
All right, sorry to cut you off, but we got to get.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys, very much appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, should we reschedule the site plan violation
I think we should
discussion?
Leave this or
let
move it?
Jennifer goals.
You can leave that. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, we have completed our work session and will now begin our regular meeting. Everybody ready?
Yep.
Good evening and welcome to the village board meeting for the village of Pleasantville. Today is Monday, April 29. We began at 7 with a work session and are now starting our regular meeting a little bit late, aiming for 8. Our next regular meeting is 2 weeks from today on Monday, May 13. Work session at 7, regular meeting at 8. I have a bunch of announcements to make, but I'll make one of them now and then invite Chief Eric Gressner to provide his quarterly presentation. But the announcement I did want to make is that on Friday night, Eric Morrissey and I journeyed our way to Mamaroneck, New York. And the reason we did that is that Chief Eric Gressner was sworn in as this year's president for the Westchester County Chiefs of Police Association. So it was a great event and a very significant honor for Eric that is well deserved and that reflects obviously well on him that his colleagues chose him for this role. But clearly, as is the case for everything you do and everything our department does, reflects well on the village. And we thank you for that. A really nice night. I was pleased and proud to be there. So thank you. With that, introducing the man, Chief Eric Gressner, with his presentation about the first quarter of 2024.
So we were doing that and the school board as well?
Yes.
Do you get hazard pay for one of those?
It's well, I think my time on the school board is about over. My term ends in June, so I'm starting to see certain things start to fall to the side a little bit. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for those kind words. Obviously, thank you and Mr. Morrissey for being there on Friday night. You spoke very eloquently as usual.
As did you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure having you there. So, I know, I understand you have a busy agenda, so I have tried to be brief, and succinct in my, comments for tonight, but, as always, it's a wonderful opportunity to bring the board up to speed on what's going on with the police department and let the community know, what we're doing and what we're working on and how things look downstairs. So, next, please. Again, our usual, list of various calls that we attend to throughout the quarter and the number of calls that we go through, no major changes. Usually that's just there for, record keeping purposes. Next.
But if the alarm response card calls double,
I don't know why particularly, that would have gone up quite as much as it did. Alarm responses, what we didn't have was, significant, activity based on those alarm responses. Might have
So
just
they're
been a
mostly
little
false alarms?
statistical anomaly.
okay.
So our patrol activity numbers remaining relatively constant, except you do see a large spike in the number of parking summonses that were issued. Part of that, we did make enforcement, quote unquote enforcement, a goal for this upcoming year, but also, of course, certain natural drivers such as the increased snow ordinance activity, as well as we did bring some new officers on board, and that tends to invigorate self-motivated activity in really everybody in the department. Next. So we did some community policing, as we always do every quarter, and this is some of my favorite parts to bring to the board and to the village. Back in February, Lieutenant Gilmartin, Sergeant Burwell, and Detective Charletti were all invited to come up to Bedford Road School and participate in Read Aloud Day. So if you go next, you have some photos from that. I know that multimedia is the best way to go in these presentations. So that's Detective Charletti speaking to one group. Next.
He himself, a BRS.
Actually, if you can
Right.
look on the back, there's some, on the board there were some traits about him. One of the things was he was a former BRS student, who was there, participating. Obviously, you can see the kids are engaged with him. Next. This is Sergeant Burwell reading a book, another, Bedford Road student alumni who, currently works in the village. And then next, lastly, Lieutenant Gilmartin, it's a little difficult to see, but if you do get a chance to go online, they were all asked to make funny faces. I made this picture a little bit bigger just so that not only the kids' faces, which are absolutely hilarious, but also Lieutenant Gilmartin got into the mood as well and fully involved with the baking faces part. Okay, next. We did, our detective division went down. We do this occasionally for some of the adult service providers that are in the village. We have the opportunity for our detectives to go down and speak to them about the internet. Obviously, I'll talk a little bit about some of the ways that the internet affects everybody here in the community, but we think it's an important thing to do to make sure. And we usually talk to the staff at the facilities to find out sort of what are some of the key concerns that they have and use of the internet, whether it is friend sharing or trusting people or monetary situation transactions that go on the internet. It's a hot topic for us to make sure that we touch base on. So all three of our detectives participated in that presentation. Question and answer session, a lot of really engaged folks in that. And the staff was there as well and they learned some things too. So I thought that was a very good use of our time. Next, please. Calls of note. We had a situation in which, so I want to talk a little bit about sort of financial crimes. It goes back to this concept of the internet and awareness around transactions on the internet. It is obviously it's a growing trend throughout the area and around the country that the use of deception, the internet, all these different things in order to scam people out of money is an ongoing concern of ours, and that's something that we see. Many times we see the result of these things without putting a face to it. But in this particular case, we actually had someone who came into the bank with a check. The teller noticed that the check looked unusual, had some unusual features to it. They called us, we responded over, and we were able to actually make an arrest for criminal possession of a forged instrument. That's actually a felony in this case because he was offering it for payment. So, a successful thing, a lot of credit to the staff of the bank, obviously, and to the alert teller who recognized, you know, these people see hundreds of documents and checks every day. So for them to recognize that this was suspicious and we were able to investigate it, make an arrest, that was great. But again, it is, you know, we tell people if you're suspicious of an interaction, especially when it's happening online or with someone who you can't see face to face, you're probably right. And if you're not suspicious, you should do your research anyway, because so many of these interactions are fraudulent. Even when, and again, they're getting very good. You know, people calling and saying, hey, you know, I'm an attorney for your grandson or granddaughter and they need money to get out of jail. You know, obviously that's an anxiety inducing thing, tends to put people in a bad position to make rational decisions and good choices. So we just ask everybody to be as alert as possible, be suspicious of every interaction until such time that your suspicions are completely removed. Next. So good news as far as staffing and overtime. Our overtime numbers decreased. Again, multiple reasons for that. As we go from October, November, December to January, February, March, we have less vacation time that's being used. We did also bring 2 new officers, as you recall, in the beginning of February. We brought 2 new officers on board. Once they cleared their field training, they counted towards manpower, and so we did see a significant decrease in our overtime hours for the month from February into March. So overall, bless you.
I'm so sorry.
Not at all. Overall, good news as far as the overtime numbers. We were happy that they were trending in the right direction. Next, we'll see just a little bit of a breakdown again across the board. Numbers down back to some of our lower numbers. You know, close to matching our Q2 and Q3 from last year. Q1 was high, Q4 was high, but we kind of got back down to a little bit more of a manageable level here in the first quarter this year. Next, please. So, as we've talked about many times, our school guard situation is in flux. And that is completely understandable and very reasonable, but we did for one day, we were actually able to sit there and we had all of our school guards on post for exactly one day. A couple of people had come back from medical leave, and then some other people went out. I don't believe it was for medical situations, but for a short time we did that. The good news is, question.
You can finish your sentence.
Oh,
Yes.
The good news is, as we sought to expand our roster of lot coordinators for the farmers market, we took that as an opportunity to also interview and inquire about school guard positions. And we do have on the agenda tonight some approvals for people who are going to be serving both potentially as lot coordinators, but also as school guard fill-ins. So we love school guard fill-ins because that is the quickest and easiest way to make sure we're maintaining our staffing levels between. So as you recall, our hierarchy for school guard coverage is school guard fill-ins, and then our community service worker employees, and then our police officers. And obviously those, as we go from level to level, those are more of a drain on our resources, not just monetarily, but also, you know, we're having police officers potentially standing on a school crossing guard. They're not potentially on patrol or doing something else. We obviously always backfill those positions and make sure we're not short because someone's on a crossing guard post. But it's not our best use of resources to have officers doing school guard posts, and so we try to avoid that as whenever possible. Yes.
Can you comment on the incident in front of Bedford Road School with the flags, et cetera?
So it is, for those of you who are not familiar with the incident that we're discussing, a few weeks ago, one of our crossing guards at the intersection of Bedford Road and Romer Avenue was doing her duty, conducting traffic control. There was one of the vehicles that was waiting in line started to get agitated. They started to beat their horn a little bit, and as they drove by, someone sitting in the car actually reached out, and the crossing guard had flags to indicate to assist her with traffic control, ripped those flags out of her hand. So we are investigating that case currently. It's currently under investigation. I'll leave it at that at this point. But we have good reason to believe we are moving in a in an appropriate direction as far as getting to a point to identify who those people were and.
So I guess my question is, if you do identify the perpetrators, even if, I won't say your name, but the guardian question, does not want to pursue things, that was really an attack on the village, right? So it would be our choice, or would it?
So I would say that in most of those cases, in order to move forward with a prosecution, you need the cooperation of a victim. In any case like that, obviously, the fact that that person is a village employee, we would have to have a very in-depth conversation as to how we would pursue that in a criminal case without a, you know, I don't know that I've ever heard of a place where, failing the cooperation of the victim to move forward with that we've been able to successfully prosecute those cases. So it would definitely be on a case-by-case basis, but we'd kind of be in uncharted territory.
Is it a misdemeanor what happened from your perspective, or?
I mean, again, yes, by and large, we're definitely not looking at a felony. You know, because it's, and again, the terms, you know, do we call this an assault? You know, I think commonly we would call it an assault, and an assault in New York State, you need an injury. And at this point, we have no indication of it. You know, she is obviously performing her official duties. So there are a number of factors that go into exactly what that charge would be, but I think I'm confident we would be able to find a charge that would be beyond a simple violation.
I mean, this is only my opinion, and I cannot speak for the village, of course, but I think we certainly want to send the message that the school crossing guards are important to us, that they have a sort of sacred task of protecting our children, and that people who feel that their time is more valuable than our kids are not to be tolerated.
You know, I think we have, let's put it this way. I will say with confidence that the community's support has been 100% behind the crossing guard in that situation. I know she is aware of that and feels encouraged by that, but how it potentially works its way out will still be.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next, please. So some of the trainings that we attended, that we provided for the officers, Officer Velardo, it's been a little while since we've had someone who is certified as a car seat installer. We are, Officer Velardo is currently working on getting the word out to the community to make sure that we know.
I commend you for that, because I've had to go, when I had kids, we went to Mount Pleasant.
Yeah.
So that's great, there's so many kids here in Pleasantville, and there's so many parents who don't know how to put in proper. So I think that's huge. Again, I commend the department for having that training done, and hopefully you put it out there now when you have a day. That's what Mount Pleasant does every year.
Yeah.
And that's great. Glad to see that.
Yeah, we considered Pleasantville Day as a possibility. But the problem is you probably need about 10 or 15 minutes short of setting up appointments and expecting people to hold them. We think the space concerns are a struggle.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to work on trying to find some sort of appropriate day to be able to set aside a little bit of space. You know, obviously the normal thought would be we can just do it in the parking lot back there, but that might be more difficult than we originally thought out. So where we can do it, you know, do we do it down at the DPW while people come down and drop off recycling?
What if you coordinate with high school, and next time they do a car wash, we can do some installs at the same time?
Yeah.
Or a farmer's market, maybe, like, is there enough space for it?
It's always the queuing up of cars that we can fill up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to keep, I mean, at least the way they did it in Mount Pleasant, it was like a parking lot area they had, and like you said, people had appointments, and there was a queue for sure. Just 'cause people were still coming, some took longer than others. Yeah, I think it would be best to not associate it with any event, to have it be its own thing, so that.
Well, and the other thing too is that we're gonna give folks the opportunity just to contact the police department and say, hey, can I come in on Thursday? I mean, it takes a few minutes, but it doesn't take longer than we're usually on call.
Most of it are new expecting parents. That's usually the people that really want this kind of help the most. So.
Yeah. For sure. I'll spread the word.
And then in addition, myself and the two lieutenants attended some training with Hope Not Handcuffs. As you recall, Hope Not Handcuffs is our opioid diversion policy. It has a number of different facets that it includes. The most obvious and the most high profile one is the fact that people can come into the police department at any time. They won't be arrested and charged for anything that they have on them. They can seek assistance. We reach out to Hope Not Handcuffs and they are immediately brought they're assessed and they're brought for treatment. But Hope Not Handcuffs also includes a number of other venues, other pathways to treatment. And so we thought it was appropriate and necessary for us to go and just sort of talk to some other departments that are successful with the program and see sort of what they're doing and how we can maximize our partnership with Hope Not Handcuffs. So that was some training that was very much worth our time. Next, Detective Charletti. All right, so we're gonna read this one and go, wow, what's going on in town? Detective Charletti participated in a webinar regarding death investigations, and two of our officers participated in a ghost gun investigation workshop. Now, these are not our typical, these are not the types of things that we are dealing with on a typical basis. However, for instance, the death investigation case, the good thing about that is we don't just recognize the signs of a suspicious death, we also recognize the signs of an unsuspicious death. So one of the things that we always think about, and you know, everything is a crime scene. First day in the academy, they tell you everything's a crime scene until you prove that it's not. So again, we thought it was very valuable training for him to attend. And then for Detective Sergeant Zane and Officer Alonzo, you know, these are weapons that are being manufactured in people's homes. They are no serial numbers, they are not identifiable. And so, although again, not something that we think is rampant here in the village, but we thought it was, it would be knowledge well received by officers. And so we participated in that as well. Next. Another one of our goals for this year was an officer wellness program. We partnered with Guardian Revival, which is a not-for-profit that works on providing mental health and wellness for officers and veterans. We signed an MOU with them. It's not no cost involved, but we just signaled our commitment. They have a number of programs, including music performances, outdoor adventures, health and fitness classes that they run. And so basically our wellness leaders will work directly with Guardian to make sure that our officers are brought into knowledge of all those things that are going on. You know, the move for officer wellness really was in the last few years, the recognition that, especially after a critical incident, police officers could use more supports. It has now expanded not just to be in the event of something bad happening, but also on blue sky days to ensure that officers are supported and potentially better prepared to handle the stressors of this profession. Next. All right, just a couple updates on some of the things that are going on. As you recall, we are partnering with Westchester County and a number of other departments to transition to a new records management system. That is the system that puts every call we go on, every interaction that we have, everything goes into this records management system. Our current system is dated, to say the least. It is long story of how we got to where we are. It's basically in the two iterations that we've had, it's been the same system that I've used since we got here, or that we've used since I got here. So we were definitely due for it. The county did a major capital IT project to bring a number of departments on board. That project, unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances and a lot of things outside of our control, has been pushed back to a go live date of no earlier than February of next year. Originally, it was supposed to be March of this year. We are still working on it. Lieutenant Gil Martin donates a lot of time to making sure, basically, we're taking all these systems that each independent police agency had and trying to stitch this together into a quilt that works for everybody. And so obviously that is very labor intensive. He spends a lot of time working on that. He's very intimately involved in the minutia of what goes in this drop-down list, how should this look? So there's a lot of time and effort on that. Again, the company got back to us, they had some complications and things that had nothing to do with us, but we are now pushed back to going live next year. We don't expect that's going to impact our operations, but we're ready for the new system to come on board, for sure. Next. Our radio communications project, as you remember, we have signed on to join the MTA consortium and join their network. I don't want to steal too much thunder from my next quarterly update, but we are up to date and our plan to go and cut over to the new channel, which is digital, fully encrypted, 700-800 megahertz. I know this is a little bit wonky, but that is scheduled for tomorrow. We had originally thought we were going to do that in the last couple of weeks, but there were some issues. Our vendors have been tremendous. Everything is tied in, patched in. We're going to be able, I mean, we did a test today and they heard us in Poughkeepsie. So we are excited about that possibility. They have a few more punch list things to do tomorrow, but we do expect to go live on that and begin use the new system tomorrow.
Great.
Again, that is a system that is not only working off of a robust tower typical radio police radio network, but also has the capability to go off of LTE. So we have redundant pathways for those messages to be carried across. So again, I thank the board for your support of that project, and we are very close to being finished with what we need to do to bring that into play. And then lastly, just within the last less than 2 weeks, we took delivery of our hybrid vehicle that we had ordered well over a year ago, probably 16 and 18 months ago. That was finally delivered to us. So that is in service. The 2 EVs that the board approved are on the lot. They, obviously there are very few places that do the outfitting of police cars. There are I shouldn't say even fewer, but each one of those places has very few technicians to actually do the work. So our cars have been sitting on the lot. We're just waiting for them to get into the bays, and then we'll bring those 2 EVs online and in service. We're hopeful that by the next time I'm standing here, we will have those in the fleet, but we will keep you informed.
Q2s, you're going to be rocking.
I mean, I've told you everything that's going to happen, and well, so that is all, unless anybody has any questions.
Impressive how fast and precise you're getting it.
Yes, exactly. As long as
Every
nobody-
time I think no information is lost, but it like keeps going.
As long as nobody says, how come we didn't talk for longer, then I'm good.
PowerPoints.
Oh, I did have a quick question somebody raised, which is about the situation with drop off and pick up around the school. I know that we've had a lot of problems with people double parking and things like that. And somebody was asking me specifically about, the spaces right next to the entrance to the library parking lot, which are not legally parking spaces, but I guess people have been parking there and it makes it difficult for people to navigate. So I just wonder if there's any update on that situation and.
I mean, we've continued to have committee meetings about this. We do our best to be in that area, as often as possible. Sometimes it's directed patrol. Sometimes it's random to be in the area. It's a struggle because, it is literally pushing back the sand. As soon as you take your hand away, people start to come back in. We do our best to keep things moving. We understand that parking is limited and most people feel like they're just going to drop off and head in. So it's not something that we look to go up and make it unnecessarily difficult for people, but we're hopeful that as the weather gets better, people feel a little more comfortable walking a little farther. We tend to see the worst parking is usually around when the worst weather is and people don't want to be outside when it's wet or when it's cold. But we're going to continue to focus on that area for sure.
Okay. Great. Anybody else? Great. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, President. Mark, further congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on, is there any comment on any subject from a member of the public, either in the room or on Zoom?
Reese, do you have any questions for us?
No.
All right. All right, there being none, let me go back. I had a few announcements I wanted to make. The first, I already mentioned the chief's ascension to the role of president of the Westchester County Police Chiefs Association. Congratulations again. On an extraordinarily sad note, today, I and a number of people from the village attended the funeral for Robert Spitalieri. That's Robert of Frank and Joe's, who passed away completely unexpectedly last week. A very sad story. Robert was, along with Mal, the two owners of Frank and Joe's, an anchor of that store for 16 years, and a person who was a friendly and trusted face for a whole lot of us who've been in there many, many times. A great shock that he died, and I certainly expressed to his family that it's a loss for the village as well as for the family, and we all feel that deeply. So, on a much brighter note, last week, the Chamber of Commerce had the Business Person of the Year. You want to mention that, Paul?
Yes, we have this event every year. This year, the businesses like Sulara from Sir Speedy. She's been in business since the early 90s here in Pleasantville, and we're really glad to give her this award, and it was well attended, and it was a really good event.
She's great. Thank you again to the Chamber of Commerce, running all kinds of programs, some of which are visible to the public and some of which perhaps a lot of people don't know about, but a well-deserved honor for Sue. Congratulations again, Sue, if you have an occasion to hear our voice. Great event on Saturday, the culmination of a whole lot of planning, the opening of the new playground up in Nanahagan Park, just above the pool, ribbon cutting there, pretty fabulous scene when a small army of kids shot into the playground and jumped all over the new equipment. So a shout out to a whole lot of people, obviously Mike Newman, our Parks and Rec Superintendent, for shepherding this whole thing through from its inception, thanks to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board and to the folks who joined on as a playground advisory board. I think what they've come up with for a design is a whole lot of interesting stuff, much more open-ended opportunities for kids to play, a really nice upgrade for that playground. And a special shout out to the, I think, pushing 100 volunteers over a couple of days who assisted the Parks Department and the professional from the equipment company in installing that. So great multi-generation tradition of public assistance, building playgrounds, and it lived itself out today in a really great way. So if you're at all inclined to play on a playground, bring your kids up to Nanahagan and get a look. And if you're not a playground player, find yourself walking around the pond, you should admire what has come. We were happy to thank our former Assemblyman Tom Avenanti. It was through his office that the funds to do that project came to us. So as most of you will already know, the second phase of our Manville Road project has begun. A couple of weeks ago, there were a bunch of problems to be resolved along the way. In order to get that back going, we hoped it would be a month or so earlier than it was, but happy to report that the work is ongoing. Quite a bit of comment from various people concerned about what the overall plan is going to be and why we're doing it. We try to measure that out and push it out in lots of different ways, but as is inevitably the case, not everybody hears that message. So two things to say. One is if you're interested in what the finished result will look like, you can go to pleasantville-ny.gov, and I think right on the front page in news is a report about the project starting up again and a link that will allow you to look at and or download and print the final rendering of what we're building. Short version of a long story. We are widening the roadway between Valvoline and the War Monuments to include a right turn only lane. The reason for that is that the elbow slip lane that currently goes out of Memorial Plaza up over the bridge will be removed. And those cars will end up at the traffic light now with their own right turn only lane. We took down the 5 flagpoles for safekeeping during the construction. those exact same flagpoles are going back in exactly the same place. The trees that were around the monuments were taken down for this work as we build a new retaining wall. But as you can see in the rendering, many more trees will be planted than we had before. It's really, I think, quite impressive landscape plan by our landscape architects, Wagner Hodgson. I know, as perhaps many of you do, not everyone agrees with the overall plan. There certainly is disagreement about removing the slip lane. What I do think most people could agree on is that in the end result, our war monuments will remain exactly where they are, but for the first time since they were erected, not be on a traffic island and instead be in a small park where folks can approach on sidewalks and with a seating area in front, a really much more honorific setting. But for folks who are wondering about the genesis of the project, I just point out a few aspects of what drove this, one of which is that slip lane out to the bridge has been an ongoing site of fender benders over many, many years, with many complaints about that condition. And the New York State Department of Transportation, which owns Manville Road, has been clear that a condition like that would not be allowed to be built today. It is not compliant with any traffic standards. In addition to that, it creates an extremely difficult pedestrian condition in that location with cars feeding in lots of ways and cars coming out of the slip lane and trying to zip left to go down Vanderbilt. And then add to that, our sidewalks, which have probably 1980s era handicap ramps in them, are long since no longer ADA compliant, which requires that the ramp not intrude entirely into the flat sidewalk so that someone who's mobility impaired or a wheelchair does not end up going down as you cross. So the result of this is we're going to have wider sidewalks, ADA compliant ramps, I think a much more beneficial pedestrian condition. And when it is all done, we will have improved the endless problem of the double light that exists, one in front of the Burns, one in front of the parking lot. That second light will remain, but be revised to face in only one direction. And then lastly, the entire area, including the work we did last year, from Tompkins all the way to Grant Street, will be milled and repaved. So we will have sleek new paving and brand new striping throughout that whole area. So consummation devoutly to be wished.
Can we pause just to let Eric explain some of the safety results on the Memorial Plaza part of this work already?
Yes, I'm going to talk about Memorial Plaza between Bedford and Manville Road.
Yeah.
I forget the exact percentage decrease, but looking at, I think it was 9 months year over year, there had been a dramatic decrease.
Yeah, it was like more than a third, I think, in a reduction in traffic accidents and incidents.
Yeah, just in that quarter.
So we'll keep you up to date on all of this, but again, those of you who may not have been aware of it, if you sign up at pleasantville-ny.gov, left column, subscribe to news, you can choose the things you're interested in, but if you subscribe to general news, you would have gotten and will continue to get updates on projects like that, so you're aware of it. And if it's not of interest, you can simply delete it. If it is of interest, you can click into it and see where we are going with it. Pool update, as we've mentioned in the past, it's out to bid. We get back the bids in early June, and then we'll see what kind of numbers we're looking at. That's a combination of the rebuilding of the main and the kiddie pool and the flood abatement issues that have been added to that project and significantly added to its expense. We're hoping with crossed fingers that the numbers come in at a level that can be that we can stomach. There remains the possibility that those numbers are going to come back at a level we can't stomach at the moment, in which case we'll have to reconsider what to do and when to do it. Whole lot of work has gone into that pool plan. Whole lot of people are excited about it, us included, and we very much would like to see it happen. But at minimum for the current pool season, we will have our current pool, and pool registration opened up, I think, on the 15th. So you can sign up and sign yourself up for the pool. The early bird rates for those with a 10570 zip code end on May 15. So You save a little bit if you sign up now. We encourage you to do so, which you are able to do online. And we are also morphing into a digital pool pass, right? So you will have the option of a digital pool pass or a laminated tag. So get yourself to pleasantville-ny.gov, choose the Parks and Rec Department, sign up for the pool. We very much look forward to a good season. So, Soldiers and Sailors, a lot of people have asked me about that. As we mentioned in the past, the drainage from Soldiers and Sailors comes out at the end of the park by the parking lot. It goes under the parking lot and then to Clark Street, and it continues along Clark Street all the way to Bedford Road. A piece of the pipe under Bedford Road has failed and has collapsed, so it's only allowing a very small amount of water through. A modest rainstorm it can accommodate. As soon as we have a heavy rainstorm, it backs up and we have to go pump out Soldiers and Sailors. Obviously, we're working hard to try to keep that as playable as we possibly can. Out to bid for that project soon. And it's anticipated to be a pretty expensive project that involves digging up all along Clark Street in an environment where there's lots of other infrastructure to be avoided. And in some cases having to dig, I think, as far as 15, 16 feet deep in order to replace this thing. So got to do it. As my mother-in-law used to say, sometimes it feels like the house is winning. And then lastly, 4 dates to put on your schedule if you haven't already. Pleasantville Day, Saturday, May 18. Our Memorial Day service, Monday, May 27. The fire department parade that same week, Friday, May 31. And the music festival, Saturday, July 13. PleasantvilleMusicFestival.com. Sign up, get your tickets. We look forward to a great day. And again, as we have said a couple of times in the past, a big shout out to Northwell Health, the owners of both Phelps Hospital in Sleepy Hollow and Northern Westchester Hospital in Kisco. Now for the 3rd year as the presenting sponsor, our lead sponsor for the Pleasantville Music Festival 2024. Then the last thing I had to report is, the last 2 things I had to report is work has now begun at 3rd and Washington in the remaining retail space that will become White's Apothecary. Yes, Pleasantville, New York is getting a pharmacy back. So work has begun to build that out. That is great news for all of us. And then also a shout out to the Jacob Burns Film Center, which has completed some renovations on the top floor and opened a wine bar and cafe called Take 3, where folks can stop in before or after a movie. Check the Burns website for their hours, but it's a really beautiful space and a new opportunity for folks to hang out in our great village. Anything else? Anybody have other things to announce?
Just a quick one. This past weekend, the Climate Smart Task Force hosted one of the events at the recycling center where we recuperate old gas-powered lawnmowers, leaf blowers, weed whackers, and people can turn those in and then earn a rebate on an electric replacement. So it's a very simple system. You just drop off your old equipment and then email us the invoice for the new equipment that you bought and you get a check in the mail. So that's a rebate program that's funded through a state grant that we earned, and we're sort of whittling it down, but while there's still money left, you can reach out to us to take advantage of the program.
Thank you for that. Anything else?
Just
All right.
on the Music Fest front, there are tents available.
Oh, 10 city spaces remain available. So those are a great spot to have a base of operations at the music festival. So we encourage anybody who's interested to contact Alyssa. 3rd floor Village Hall.
Announced in Florida,
Pardon?
the leaf blower ordinance coming into.
Oh, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're actually working on a mailing for this just to make sure everyone's aware of it. And there's gonna be a banner and other things too, but just to remind everyone that we have an ordinance that went into effect last summer, which, according to which from the 15th of May through the end of September, gas-powered leaf blowers are not permitted. Electric leaf blowers continue to be permitted during that time period.
Thank you for that. All right. Is there a motion to open the public hearing to consider the fiscal year ending 2025 village budget?
So,
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome to that public hearing. As folks who receive our email blasts know, we have made a couple of modifications to the budget since it was first proposed in draft back in March. A significant piece of that was to add some, increase the tax rate a bit to generate some money to toss at that aforementioned Clark Street drainage project. Eric, you want to give the quick summary?
Sure. So, how the preliminary budget, differs from the tentative, we've increased the tax levy by an additional $200,000. So a total wide, village-wide tax levy of 13.5 million. That generates a tax rate increase of 4.38%, or about $220 on the average village taxpayer's tax bill. In addition, just that represents a budget that's over the tax cap by about $132,000. Obviously, the tentative budget was just below that. And the difference there is that $200,000 is going to be a transfer to capital for the Clark Street drainage project. And that expense would be built in the budget for debt service on the large projects that we'll take on it out.
And
pool
and to be clear, we anticipate that the Clark Street project may be in total in the range of 600,000.
Yes, 650,000.
Right. So, as we commented at the time of the preliminary budget, we have essentially got built-in increases in cost annually between 400,000 and 600,000. And that arises from contractual increases, which is obviously a big piece of the money we spend annually on our people. And then the annual increases that we're seeing in healthcare primarily, but in various other categories. So what you're basically talking about is a built-in increase that far exceeds the tax cap. In this case, because we've had some significant increases to the tax base, that is new assessed properties, so that there are more players paying into the system, that has mitigated the increase, which would otherwise be substantially higher. I can tell you that all of us have gone through the budget with all department heads, as Eric and Noreen and her team have done for hours and hours and hours. Nothing about this budget reflects some massive new spending effort. It is simply the reality that to keep the trains running is an expensive process. So, any comments before we invite public comment?
No, I think that's well put.
All right, any comment from the public? Let me check on Zoom to see if there was a comment. Raise your hand in Zoom. I see none. All right. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there a motion to open a public hearing to consider introductory local law 4 of 2024 to amend chapter 25 of the Code of the Village of Pleasantville concerning membership on the planning commission?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This is a continuation of discussion we had earlier. And our proposal here is to reduce our planning commission membership from 7 people, which is what it has been historically, to 5 people. There are plenty of planning commissions around Westchester at 7. There are plenty of them at 5. We have historically been at 7. It has been increasingly difficult to find people who are both qualified to do it and willing to do it, and who have schedules that allow them to be in attendance. So we've been in an environment recently where in some cases it has been a fragile coalition to maintain a quorum that allows the planning commission to take action, requiring a minimum of 4 members in order to vote. And in which case, if you have only 4 members present out of 7, all would have to vote the same way in order to take action. So that is both an indication of some members finding it hard to be in attendance based on their personal or business lives. But also it's unfair to applicants when they confront a circumstance where they do not have a full board present, and the people that have heard all of the steps in the process for events that have meant, for applications that have many times been through several rounds with several different meetings, you can end up in a circumstance where a vote could be taken, but not all the people that heard the whole story are there. And as a result, it depends on unanimity, even in a circumstance where conceivably a full board might have passed a project by a split vote. So all of that has led us to the idea of reducing it to a total of 5 people. We actually, as of this very moment, have only 6 because the 7th member resigned. We have 2 more members who have indicated that they will be resigning soon, and that would further support the argument to go to 5 instead of 7. Any other comment? Comment from anyone in the public?
Yes.
Enter, and you need to come to the podium. We know who you are, but we're going to have to ask you to say your name and address.
I can't believe no one knows me. Hi, Amy.
We know.
We know. My apologies for coughing in the background. Allergies are driving me crazy. Geraldine Stapleton, 214 Edgewood Avenue, Pleasantville. Welcome to Yami, my former babysitter. I'm excited. I hope she doesn't give birth while we're here. Okay, first of all, I really do appreciate all the committees that, the people who volunteer when the rest of us are criticizing so much that goes on or not happy about it. So I do really appreciate you doing this job, the planning board, the, recreation board, there's so many. And,
Yes.
and I'm very grateful for that, okay? As to the situation with the planning board, I just had some questions. I'm not expecting you necessarily to answer them right now,
Sure.
but they're points that I really wanted to address.
Okay.
I'm not sure how beneficial it really is to bring our board from 7 to 5. I have never seen a position advertised on the planning board, any board, quite frankly. I haven't seen it anywhere, any postings. And Nicole, one of the things you came about talking about being on the trustees was more communication. I think that was something, Paul, we had this conversation at my front door at one point. It's up to us as a community to also pay attention to what you're trying to disseminate to us. Like the gentleman who's wondering what happened to the trees
Right.
at Memorial Plaza. I know you've tried to address that for a long time.
Yep.
But I have not seen positions advertised. I did talk to Russ tonight, just earlier, just a quick phone call. Back in 2022, in February of 22, I actually wrote to Robert at the building department and said, I'm interested in the planning board. He said, not him, he'd pass it on.
Yes. We did.
I have said it to you, Peter,
You
on
have.
plenty of occasions.
You're in the
on
hopper.
street.
Yes.
I'm looking at and I don't know all of these people that are on our planning board. Russ is on it 23 years. I'm so happy that Russ Klein he's an architect of great repute, and it's great that we have someone who's qualified like him to be leading the planning commission. David Keller, he's MTA economist. He's been through time, he has earned the experience, right? To be on it. The gentleman who does drama and fine arts, how are these people that are on the board? How did they arrive at these positions? We have a town with multiple community members who work for billion-dollar construction companies, okay? I'm not saying they want to come and sit on the planning board because just like all of you, they have jobs that They may not want to commit more time to something that they really don't want to be involved in. But I haven't seen the question go out to the community saying, we need people to serve on these boards. I talked to Russ about it today. The buck stops with you, Peter, and whether or not you approve it. The planning board, I sat on the planning board for, not the planning, excuse me, the
Parks Board.
Parks and Recreations. We're pretty much an ineffectual committee for all the amount of time that we're on it, because we can talk about all we want, but we can't really make any decisions. And I know members of the community who've wanted to be on that board and are not accepted. No real reason, but I just hear that there's openings after the fact. And like you're telling me now that there's openings on the planning board.
There aren't as of the moment, but we anticipate.
Where did that, where has that been advertised? Where does anyone in the community know that there's opening in the planning board? How do 2 board members alone have between them 45 years on the planning board? I mean, I don't see, there was no end of term for me on the rec board. I stayed on it for years. When I came on the board, there was someone on it for 15 plus years. I'm more than happy to see term limits and movement. I think that it may be difficult to keep those positions filled, but until you ask members of the community, I think we do need to see a change and a reflection on the changes that take place in the community. And what you're saying about, like, how are the people that are on the planning board now? I see 2 architects, one gentleman who's been on it so many years, as I said, he's learned the business, if you will. How are the other people on it? I'm not questioning how they got here per se, but if you're asking for people to be qualified, then how did they get here? Okay, that was one of my first things that I wanted to talk about.
Can I answer one part of your question? Not with the planning board, but we had vacancies on the library board. We alternate with Mount Pleasant in having either 3 or 4 members of the library board, and we did advertise that. So
where did you advertise? I'm just curious.
We advertised it in the village newsletter. It went all over email. And
I certainly did not. I'd like to think that I.
We had 7 applicants for 2 spots, so there was plenty of interest.
Okay.
And these are from people who saw it through social media and other channels.
Okay.
Well, why don't you keep going?
Okay, so
as you say.
So I feel that I was trying to hear some of what you were saying in the back about your concerns about, and I do know I've sat here sometimes on very contentious public audience on developments, et cetera, that are taking place. But I feel that if we reduce the number from 7 to 5, we don't have so many dissenting voices, if you will, in the policy making. We've already moved the Architectural Review Board into the Planning Commission. I mean, David serves on both.
All the planning commission, the planning commission serves the ARB and candidly, if we had thus the capacity to have a separate ARB, I think we still would. But the reality is, in many communities, in my day job, I've been before some ARBs on behalf of clients for sign programs. In Dobbs Ferry, I'm before 5 architects. In the village of Pleasantville, we've reached out to a bunch of architects, and many of them are themselves before this board and therefore can't be on it. So, we have ended up in an environment where it was difficult even to make sure that we had 1 architect on the ARB. So that allowed us, Eric Brotherton was the last chair of the ARB before we folded it into the planning commission. And there are aspects of that I think have been good, and there are aspects of that are difficult. I will say one piece of it is that applicants often felt like it was a little bit of a chase around too many bureaucracies to appear at the planning commission and then have to go back and appear at the ARB. So, there's some benefit to that. But the other thing to say, and I think I served on the planning commission for way back when with Russ before I became a trustee. And I can report, having been through the sort of ramp up to serve on that committee, that the planning commission, unlike Parks and Rec, unlike most of our other,
Yeah, you have a
boards,
the planning.
has significant power and significant responsibility enshrined in state law. And a whole lot of special information that you have to ingest and be able to deal with about the State Environmental Quality Review Act, about all kinds of things. We have a paid planner who sits with the planning commission to assist in all of that, but it is definitely not a board where it's easy to arrive the first day and be operating at 60 miles an hour. So there's that piece of it. And I will also say that, you know, you mentioned both Russ and David as longstanding members, and I endorse that, and have encouraged both of them to re-up, because they provide a deep knowledge of how it all works, but also quite a bit of history. Henry Leva hasn't been on as long, and Eric Brotherton, architect, younger person, is comparatively new to that board. And, you know, what is clear is at some point, guys like Russ and David will decide they're gonna move on from this, and we need, just as you suggest, to invigorate this with, you know, sort of the next generation of folks.
And it's not all about architects, and as we know, that's Phil Merrick, you know, he's more in the planning.
He's a professional planner. for sure.
Yes, so it's not about, I'm not suggesting that we need to have a full planning commission of architects. I mean, that would be great, but then if you're in the.
No, I totally
construction
agree. I
industry-
don't even know that it would be great. I think you
No,
want
I
to.
was gonna say, if you're on the construction end of things, working with the architect is often the biggest headache. So, you know, it's not necessarily the
Yeah.
best, but my feeling is that I am concerned about moving from 7 to 5. As I said, because I feel that it's easier to have 4 people go against one than if you have 7, there's a better opportunity for more dissent if it's not a popular topic in the community, et cetera.
Well, so what I would also say about that, and you obviously know, is that the planning commission in particular, in the end, is making decisions that affect what somebody has come forward with, what a property owner wants to do. And the planning commission is in a position in some cases to say, we can't do it the way you wanted to do it. One of the things that people get confused about is that people come to the planning board with zoning rights. They have the right frequently to build what they propose. And if they need a variance, they go to the zoning board to get that variance, and they either get it or fail to get it. They come back, but with or without a variance, there is a very clearly defined guideline that says you're allowed to build this. You can build another house on this lot. You can build 26 apartments as long as you provide, you know, however many parking spaces, all those things. It's not the planning commission's role nor their right to say, well, you can't do that because we think it's too big, we think it's too whatever. It is the planning commission's role to protect the village, to make sure that the layout of it is maximized, that traffic and ingress and egress has been thoughtfully addressed, and that buffers, to the extent the zoning code builds them in, are reasonable for adjacent neighbors, and plantings are appropriate, and all of that. So,
Well, that brings me to another part of the equation, if you will. I'm aware that the planning commission works with the zoning board, with the architectural.
So
No,
it's-
I mean, there, you know,
yeah,
there,
the zoning
it's-
board is very separate. Yeah.
it's still a package
Yes.
that reflects on what we do as a development, which brings me to what I was thinking about with our building department. We have 2 very competent individuals who I believe were hired more for working in a community that was predominantly residential. And now we have quite a bit of commercial work going on. And just what you're talking about, I've sat here and listened to Russ being quite frustrated with the development on the Pew, right by the Sawmill Parkway. How did we arrive at these structures not being built to spec? When all of this paperwork, all of these drawings All of these things have to come into our, building department, be reviewed. There has to be reviews along the way with the process. The same applies to 70 Memorial Plaza with the units that are on top. It actually, the other things that are happening are like, the recent thing, and I think Helen may have been talking about the trees on Clark Street, what O'Reilly was developing. It's easier to ask forgiveness and pay the fine. And when you know what the rules are, then not ask, do it. And then I think that Depew is the same situation, where we don't have enough oversight about what is actually happening. And I'm not sure that our building department, perhaps at this point, can cover all of the work that needs to be done, or are perhaps qualified enough to handle some of the commercial
So I
aspects.
can say, I think they're very qualified. There's certainly moments when a lot is coming at them all at once. I will also say, and this is true in every one of our departments, when something goes wrong, we give very serious thought to the question of how it went wrong and how to prevent it from happening in the future. What happened at Depew? The building he built, the footprint of the building is exactly as approved by the
Yes.
planning commission. The size, the height, everything about it. What he changed significantly
It was the exterior.
was the exterior. So, and that was quite a remarkable thing for him to have done, quite shocking, honestly. And it gave rise to a long and contentious
Yes.
process to get to where we got.
But didn't he still get a CFO?
He did.
But he didn't do what he was supposed to do. We ended up perhaps having to compromise and work it out so that he could still maintain.
I mean, it had to be worked out. There was no way to avoid having to work it out. And I do think it's quite clear now that we've got some safeguards in place to make sure that when the drawings are provided, that instead of making the assumption, as is reasonable to make, that an applicant who's been through an approval process with the ARB is going to build what they said, but the details of the facade got changed, and I think I can assure you that the building department is on top of that as they go forward. The issue with the HVAC units on top of 70 Memorial, the more complicated and a bit more problematic issue, because in many cases, the HVAC sort of mechanical engineering aspect of a building hasn't been fully worked out at the point of approval. And then in that case, there was a question about whether they would be able to get gas service in the gas market.
That's not necessarily the case. We're involved in construction in Manhattan,
Yeah.
in the New York area, and also in Philadelphia. When you get the specs on those jobs, it may be under continuous review, but you don't just all of a sudden have this, oh my goodness, this is not the equipment we ordered. The specs have changed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that's exactly what happened. Certainly, yes, it was an
We
issue.
would
It
have
was not a
known
concern.
when the plans were submitted.
Right.
They would have had to submit from nuts to bolts.
Right.
Everything would have been there in the drawings.
Right.
Even if there's architectural review drawings along the way, when you're working with the contractors, it would still have to be presented, and the village would have had to know, the building department.
I mean, one interesting piece of that is whether, as you know, there is a proposal at the bank building here to build a building that would wrap around it, and the issue of rooftop mechanicals is obviously an issue that's on everyone's radar screen. I can tell you when the senior center Ashburn Hall was built 25 years ago, the rooftop mechanicals were a source of angst. So I can tell you.
So we get permission to build 4 floors then instead.
No, there's no
In the
permission,
future.
no permission provided. One interesting question is would you be better off with a parapet of some sort?
Mhm.
And how does that factor into the height of the building? So, right.
Well,
That
is
zone, the bank building is in a 3-story zone.
Mhm,
The existing bank building is 5 stories, pre-existing non-conforming,
mhm.
but what they might build around it is limited to 3.
Yeah, and that's part of what I'm thinking about with the planning commission is finding those construction people. They're not just architects who are out here in the community who do this type of work, who really know what this is about and how to read those plans and how to ask those questions. That's my thought process on it. Last but not least, I'd be glad to hear. The property that's on by Lucio's, that I.
98 Washington.
That eyesore that's been there for so many years. Back, when that was in the planning stages, one of the questions put to the planning commission at that time was, do we have bonds in place to build? Does the builder have a bond in place? And at the time, we were told it's not necessary. Are you looking at that now as a necessary, piece of the equation when developers come in here to town? That they
So
can provide a bond to
the
finish the
only-
product?
The only bond requirements we have are bonds for public infrastructure, improvements or restoration, fair to say, or?
But
So
we
I'm
cannot
not
do
honestly
that.
sure that we have the right to demand a bond for private construction.
Well, I think that some communities have that in place. Is that not correct, Eric?
I don't know.
I think it's something that we should consider because that building is an eyesore and will have to be torn down.
Well,
It can't be left vacant for all these years.
Here-
That infrastructure is at this point, can't be redeemable. It will have to be pulled down.
Here is my report on that. As perhaps you know, we finally, put a stop work order. The owner, don't have to rehash the whole history, but
Yeah.
the owner basically, sold the building to the county and the county gave it back to them for $1 with an almost $1 million surplus. That was at the last moments of the Astorino administration's attempt to fulfill the 750 units required by the consent decree with the feds. Ever since then, it has been an ongoing battle to get these guys to do what they were supposed to do. The county has sued them. They filed bankruptcy, which stopped the county suit. The court declined to permit the bankruptcy, and that started the county suit again. But I can tell you the county has been in and out of that building and with Robert Hughes, and has been talking to various developers and contractors about what it would take to complete it as the affordable housing project that it was originally intended to be. And there is at least a decent chance that that will be achieved. I mean, the project had been, amid many problems, completed in many ways. I mean, appliances in the kitchen.
Yeah, I know. I live right across the road.
Right. It has been tragically vandalized
Mhm.
because the owner failed to properly secure it, even though we were constantly on them. But I do think, at least as of the moment, county planning, which obviously has a big stake in this and got the suit going, believes that there's a way forward for the building to be finished and occupied. Stay tuned.
Yes, that same owner had his guys sleeping in sleeping bags in the building, charging their phone in Lucio's, with Lucio allowing them to use his bathroom and feed them. That's how bad that was, and that's why I'm coming back to the bond issue.
Right.
If he had to post a bond when he was developing the project, there would have been money there to finish the project, and that's something that
Yeah.
us.
Honestly, that
trustee, planning board,
conceivably,
whatever, it's something
given the
that we should look at.
county's role in all of that, I would imagine, but don't know, that the county conceivably could have demanded a bond. I
This
am
was
not sure
before
that
the
we
county.
have the
This is
right to.
before, this is when when our community was giving the
Right.
planning permission.
Yeah. All right, we'll investigate that. I'm not sure we have
For
the right.
future reference.
Yeah,
you
what
know,
I will
you're gonna-
say,
you-
what I will say is the counter argument to that, if in fact it is something that's within our rights, would be that it simply increases the cost in an already expensive place to do work. So,
Thank you.
thank you,
Thanks, Sheldon.
as always. All right. Any further comment on the planning commission question? Is there anyone on Zoom? Let me just double check. I see no hands raised. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So
Second,
Okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. All right, we'll scamper to the resolutions. I do think some of these, the very long ones can be stated in general as further stated in the record. Do you support that?
Yes, the budget transfer is just
Yeah.
the general amount.
Correct, okay. However, I do think that, 127, Paul, we should read it in its entirety.
Okay. Whereas the fiscal year and 2025 preliminary budget has been submitted, and whereas a public hearing was duly held before the Board of Trustees, now therefore be resolved the Village of Pleasantville fiscal year and 2025 budget, June 2024 through May 2025 is adopted as follows. General fund expenditures, 19,709,136. and 136. Special assessments, 1,200. Omitted taxes, 1,534. Village-wide tax levy, 13,500,000. General fund non-property tax revenues, 5,868,930. General fund appropriated fund balance, 337,472. Assessed valuation, 126,213,630. Tax rate per 1,000 assessed valuation, 106.9615. Tax rate percent increase, 4.38%. Tax levy increase, 6.2992%.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions? We reported this in more detail in the public hearing we just held. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. 128, Nicole.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following management base salaries for fiscal year ending 2025, June 2024 to May 2025. Eric Bretzner, Police Chief, $207,270. Anthony Carr, Superintendent of Public Works, Village Engineer, $190,208. Frederick Morrissey, Village Administrator Clerk, $172,179. Noreen Regan, Village Treasurer, $156,871. Robert Hughes, Building Inspector, $139,179. Michael Newman, Recreation Superintendent, $113,908. Stephanie Tim Austin, Court Clerk, $97,631. Kristen Congello, Deputy Treasurer, $87,550, and Alyssa Hochstein, Secretary to the Village Administrator, Deputy Clerk, $87,550.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved, 129.
Resolve the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following water rates for the fiscal year 2025. For residents, $70.04 per cubic foot. For non-residents in a district, $89.60 per cubic foot. For non-residents, $105.32 per cubic foot. For bulk sale pace residential rate plus New York City raw water costs. And for the cottage school residential rate less New York City raw water costs.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Yemi, 130.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees, in accordance with village law, authorizes the village treasurer to levy unpaid water rents to the 2024-2025 tax roll.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved, 131. Back to you, Paul.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the mayor to sign a tax warrant for fiscal year 2025, June 2024 through May 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 132, Nicole.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the creation of a capital account for the purposes of Bedford Road Traffic Signal Improvement Project for initial funding of $7,100 from judgments.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in, comments, questions? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion approved. David, 133.
Resolve the Village Board of Trustees hereby approves the creation a capital account fiscal year ending 2025. The replacement of truck number 4 and authorizes the transfer of $65,000 from the water fund in this amount.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved, 134, yummy.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves of the minutes of the regular meeting held on April 8th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments, corrections to the minutes?
No.
There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved, all 135. Here, I think you can state the totals. And as further, the totals in each category.
Okay.
As further stated in the record, otherwise it's a really long.
Okay. Result, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget amendments for the fiscal year 2024 as listed below. 850.
So I think you just say in the general fund, the total of 110.
Gotcha.
Right.
In the general fund, a total of 110,179. In the water fund, 26,092.59. In the refuse fund, 4,100. The increased revenue and expense, the capital fund, 372.59. The closed capital project and return balances to appropriate funds, 41,827.55.
As further stated in the record. Is there a second?
Second.
So this is the season of squaring up accounts for the close of the fiscal year.
As budget lines are overspent, we're taking from underspent lines and covering.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved, 136. Cool.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the abstract for payment of claims dated April 29th, 2024 for fiscal year ending in 2024, covering wire numbers 110586 and check numbers 110587 to 110735 from the general fund. $366,233.95 from the special purpose, $75 from the water fund, $532,472.97 from the capital fund, $35,123.61 from the refuse fund, $32,219.82 for a total of $966,125.35.
Is there a second?
Second.
As is always the case, if you're interested in the detail, the payment of claims files are available via Novus Agenda. You can get to it through pleasantville-ny.gov. Comments or questions on payment of claims? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved, 137. David.
Resolve the village administrator or superintendent of parks and recreation is authorized to execute the pool concession agreement with Westchester Food Services for the 2024 pool season in the amount of $1,600.
Is there a second?
Second.
That's the same operator we've had recently. They do quite a few pools. It's a tough business and they know how to do it. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Amy, 138.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby accepts the resignation of Sarah Winston, community service worker, effective April 27th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sarah moving on to and moving up to a different job. Congratulations to her. Sorry to leave her. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 139, Paul.
Result, the Board of Trustees hereby approve the hiring of the following part-time available school crossing guards. Job code 141 pending fingerprinting. Violet Hale, $22 an hour, effective April 30th, 2024. James Anderson Lovato, $22 an hour, effective April 30th, 2024. And Devon Coke, rate of $22 an hour, effective April 30th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Glad to add to the stack of all of options for you crossing guards. All in favor? Aye. Motion approved. 140, Nicole.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the request from the Community Scholarship Fund to hold their annual 5K walk run for education on Saturday, May 18, 2024. And further resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the police chief to close Washington Avenue between Edgewood Avenue to Manville Road from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. on May 18, 2024, to post no parking signs along the route, and to tow all vehicles violating the temporary parking restrictions.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Again, Pleasantville Day, May 18. David, 140.
Whereas Pleasantville Chamber of Commerce and the Village of Pleasantville is scheduled to hold a community block party on September 21st, 2024, rain date Saturday, September 28th, 2024, from 1 to 9 p.m. on Washington Avenue and Wheeler Avenue. And whereas Washington Avenue from Edgewood Avenue to Manville Road shall be closed from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Wheeler Avenue from Manville Road to Bedford Road shall be closed from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. And whereas pending receipt of their temporary beer, wine, and cider permit from the New York State Liquor Authority, local vendors will be selling alcohol, beer, wine, and cider during the event within the defined area of Wheeler Avenue. And now therefore be resolved, the village board permits the lifting of Village Code 54-4 consumption in public spaces within the described area of Wheeler Avenue for this date only, authorizes the village clerk to sign the New York State Liquor Authority's landlord consent form and issue an alcohol beverage permit. And be it further resolved, the police chief is authorized to post no parking signs during the dates and times noted in support of the event and is authorized to tow cars in violation of the temporary restrictions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Appropriate that Paul would second it. He's the captain of the block party army. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Yami, 142.
Whereas introductory local law 4 of 2024 has been introduced to amend chapter 25 of the code of the Village of Pleasantville concerning membership of the planning commission, and whereas a public hearing concerning introductory local law 4 of 2024 was held on April 8th, 2024 and closed on April 29th, 2024. And now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby adopts local law 4 of 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
So, we heard, as you heard in the public hearing, a bunch of thoughtful comments from Geraldine Stapleton. I think we've given this serious consideration. Some of the comments she makes are worthy of further serious consideration, but I do think we're doing the right thing. And I vote yes on this resolution. Others?
Yes.
I vote aye as well.
I was curious about the, when this was sort of enacted, was before my time. Was that also why? Like, how long has the public known about it?
So we had the initial public hearing, April 8th, was it?
Yes.
So it was about a month.
Yeah.
It's tough. I think our communication in general, I mean, it can be changed later, right?
We could expand again.
Yeah.
I do think 5 is a more sustainable number
I
and
do
a
too,
fair.
yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I'm just curious that
Yeah.
if there's much pushback with stuff like this, it can come up again.
Sure, good.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, great.
All right, so all in favor? Aye. Motion approved unanimously. 143, whose was it? Who did the last one? Was it?
I did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
back to you, Paul.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas the Village Board of Trustees authorized the solicitation of bids for the provision of labor and materials for public works project along a section of Bedford Road, New York State Route 117, which consists primarily of the installation of sidewalk, curbs, and guide rails along the west side of Bedford Road from the intersection of Bedford Road and Pierce Drive and the intersection of Bedford Road and Springfield Court, the Pleasant Village Estates sidewalk, curb, and guide rail improvement project. And whereas the Pleasant Village State Sidewalk Curb and Guide Road Improvement Project is an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, and the village board has performed an uncoordinated review. And whereas the village board is in receipt of a short environmental assessment form, CEIF, prepared for the Pleasant Village State Sidewalk Curb and Guide Road Improvements Project, and has evaluated the CEIF, now therefore be resolved that the village board, in accordance with 6 MYCRR Part 617, and upon review of the CEIF and all the other materials prepared, has identified and analyzed the relevant areas of environmental concern to determine if the Pleasant Village Estate Sidewalk Curb and Guide Rail Improvement Project may have one or more significant adverse environmental impacts, and for the reasons set forth in Part 3 of the EAF, hereby finds that the Pleasant Village Estate Sidewalk Curb and Guide Rail Improvements Project will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts, and adopts and authorizes the mayor or his need to execute an attached negative declaration for the proposed Pleasant Village State Sidewalk Curb and Guide Road Improvements Project.
Is there a second?
Second.
You want to describe this as the long discussed sidewalk out at the edge of the village?
That's right. Comes from the Pleasantville Village Estate subdivision. There was money held in escrow from that developer to construct that segment of sidewalk. We're going to continue it to Pierce Drive, build and connect that entire sidewalk network. And that is fully funded by cash. We won't need to take out any bonds.
Will be great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. 144.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign a sponsorship agreement with ENT and Allergy Associates for the 2024 Pleasantville Music Festival.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, ENT, their second year of sponsorship. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 145, David.
Resolve the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign an agreement with PAMAL Broadcasting 107.1 The Peak to advertise for the 2024 Pleasantville Music Festival.
Is there a second?
Second.
As before, the Peak is a longstanding partner in this. It has morphed in various ways, but they will be our lead radio broadcast sponsor. All in favor? Aye, motion approved. 146.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign an agreement with the Sheraton Tarrytown Hotel for the 2024 Pleasantville Music Festival.
Is there a second?
Second.
As last year, it will be the Sheraton Tarrytown Tent City, in exchange for which sponsorship they are providing some rooms to house the artists.
Nice.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 147.
Resolved the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign a sponsorship agreement in Scarborough and Tweed for the 2024 Pleasantville Music Festival.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Scarborough and Tweed. They're the suppliers of our t-shirts, offering a discount in exchange for sponsorship. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 148.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign an agreement with Party Line Tent Rentals for tenting services in the amount of $27,416.16 for the 2024 Pleasantville Music Festival.
Is there a second?
Second.
Same provider, providing the tents for the chill tent and the shade tents. All in favor? Motion approved. David, 140.
Resolve the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign a proposal from PRM Electric, Inc. for professional services in the amount of $23,500 related to the 2024 Pleasantville Music Festival.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 151.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the donation of two 2024 Pleasantville Music Festival tickets to Special Programs and Resource Connection. Spark? Yeah. Spark.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 152. Paul.
Resolved the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign a sponsorship agreement with the Refresh Home for the 2004 Pleasantville Music Festival.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 153. Nicole.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign a sponsorship agreement with Captain Lawrence for the 2024 Pleasantville Music Festival.
Is there a second?
Second.
We welcome back Captain Lawrence operating the Beer Garden. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 154. David.
Resolve the Board of Trustees hereby approves the use of American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds, for the purposes of the Police Department Communications Project in the amount of $4,613.14, as long as it's used tomorrow.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 155. Yemi.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the abstract for payment of claims dated April 29, 2024 for FYE 2025, covering check numbers 110586 and 110736, general fund, $18,452.50.
Is there a second?
Second.
So again, this is expenses that accrue to the next fiscal year. That's a separate bunch. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 156. Paul.
Resolved the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to enter into an agreement with Fun Time Amusements for rides and amusements of the 2024 Pleasantville Music Festival.
Is there a second? Fun time has provided this in the past, and the village gets a piece of the total revenue. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 157. The last one, Nicole.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign sponsorship agreement with Lexington Center for Recovery for the 2024 Pleasantville Music Festival.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Stumbling to the finish line.
That's right.
Motion.
And one point of clarification, just in, from the comment in the public hearing. Performance bonds can only cover enhancements or improvements in the public right of way. You cannot require performance bonds on private property.
Which would be quite complicated, because in the event that a private venture failed, who would complete it? Certainly the village wouldn't come into complete this.
And I also wanted to comment that there is an urgency, I think, to dealing with the situation with the planning commission, because we've had people, you know, fail to be able to present their case before the planning commission because there isn't.
Lack of a quorum.
I mean, the issue was before it was voted on, right? Like, how long has the issue been going on?
We've had issues with attendance and also
Like
issues with
years?
finding new people to join that board
Yeah.
for a good long while, several years.
Oh, okay, all right.
All right. Having completed that long list, is there any comment from the public, either online or in the room? There being no public in the room, we've bored them to death and they have left. Nobody, I see no raised hands. So thank you for your attention. We're back in 2 weeks. Is there a motion to go into executive session to discuss matters of personnel and real property?
We have 2 more work session items. You want to kick that to the next meeting?
We could do the holiday tree lighting quickly, maybe.
Yeah, it'll take long, so we can just.
Okay.
We'll vote.
All right, so
Yeah.
Some
to
feedback.
adjourn to work session and then thereafter to return to executive session for matters of real estate and personnel.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Thank you all. We will continue live on Zoom for these 2 work session discussions and then depart for the executive session. All right, holiday tree lighting event.
So just to recap on our last conversation, the decision was the request from the Chamber of Commerce who runs this event, and I'm the chair of that event specifically, was to request that specifically for this year, but going forward, we move the event from Wednesday, that normally is the date that we do it. Usually it's the first Wednesday in December. To this year specifically, or in the future, moving into a day like a Saturday. We said for different reasons in that people can attend it more. It's not a weeknight. We also wanted to move it earlier. Normally we started at 7 p.m. We wanted to move it to 6 p.m. So, specifically for this year, Thanksgiving is a lot later. So it puts us as the requested date that that the Chamber of Commerce wanted was Saturday, the 28th, which is the day after Black Friday. It's also a travel time for some people that are either visiting or some that are
The
either.
30th.
To the 30th, the 20th is Thanksgiving.
Sorry, looking at the wrong date. Sorry, looking at November. Yes, the 30th. So we were requesting the 30th, and then alternative dates that were put out by other board members were the 6th of December, which is Friday the 6th, or the 7th. So in discussion that I had with businesses and with the chamber board, everyone did still request that to have it go along with Small Business Saturday and to kick off for all businesses, like a shopping weekend and an event that many other municipalities are doing too. That Saturday, the 30th was really beneficial because a lot of people are shopping already and it's a good start to the holiday shopping season. So we're still in support of that. In regards to, I did express, there could be people that are traveling and they don't get to participate in this event, that it's a community event, but the response was also, but there are also people who are coming back. Many college students who have gone are usually home on break, and That's also why there's many events like reunions, things like that, because a lot of people come back to visit family and stay, and this would also give all the businesses a chance to get more people that are coming back. Although there are some people that travel and there are a lot of people coming back. So that was essentially the input from the chamber. Personally, on my side, just asking different groups of people. To some that were going away, they thought it was a great idea in moving to Saturday and making it earlier. They said, you know, they don't have plans that are specifically every year that they go away. So some that were going away, they said, you know, I'll be bummed to miss it, but this isn't something that it's always. So they did think the idea and the fact that we're trying to do a whole event with the chamber and doing more and making more of the event as a whole, they did think that was a really good idea. So that's the feedback I got, just from some different people I asked and in my different groups that sounded like a great idea. And obviously whoever missed it, it'd be a loss, but not enough that also we wouldn't do it just because of that reason.
Yeah, I did an informal survey and I was surprised that, November 30th one in my little informal survey. I did not expect that to be the case.
One caveat I want to just throw out there, I talked to Mike Newman and the police chief. There is a level of concern about staffing. The event.
Oh, that's a good
The
point.
holiday
Yeah, that is a good point.
They mentioned at the last time that we.
Yeah, so I mean, you all may be able to speak more.
Yeah,
about
'cause-
PD coverage, but.
Yeah, it might be a difficult event to staff Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah,
And I
that's a
know
good point.
also last year we had difficulty getting the FD out on a Wednesday night.
Right, because we need them to block the traffic.
traffic, so trying to get volunteers to come in on a Saturday on a holiday weekend might be.
So for you guys, the 6th of December would be easier.
That would probably work better in terms of staffing. Yeah, I understand the reason for it, but I think from a staffing standpoint, it might be better to go for the 6th.
Yeah, my poll did not come back positive on that weekend,
Oh,
on
yeah?
the holiday
What-
weekend.
what
I really
did
like
people-
the idea about a Saturday.
Yeah.
But just people are like, oh dear God, I have enough going on that weekend.
Not on
Please do not have one more
Thanksgiving,
thing.
My poll was equal for the Saturday, on the 30th and the December 7th, so Saturday, December 7th.
yeah.
So
Okay.
like the following Saturday was the same.
It's just a little late.
It is, but it doesn't.
How about this, Paul? Let's do it with the block party in September.
What about, well, since Thanksgiving is late, why don't we just get the tree lit the weekend before Thanksgiving?
The
I think
23rd.
that's a little, I don't know, it feels a little off.
Yeah, I think people are gonna complain about that.
Kind of like when they put.
Well, it's either gonna be early or late, which prefer, I mean, if we're not doing it that weekend,
I
by
mean-
definition, the early or late.
Unless we give up the
What about,
Saturday. and do
have we
the
thought about,
Tuesday.
it's just kind of a halfway, but have we thought about like a Thursday night though? I only say that because many people work remotely on Fridays. No,
I don't think, I see, the whole thing is, I don't think it's about you that are working
Not the
then, it's
kids.
more about the kids having to go to school and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if staffing is a problem, then that's obviously, especially if it's that weekend, then that's a big factor that I think is more limiting. And so then that, to me, I think then that leaves us on the 7th being the better. Yeah, I mean, if that is, I don't know if, maybe next year won't be that way, but, because we'll actually, I mean, I think it'd always be an issue. I think if we
Yeah.
wanted to do it on Saturday and wanted to kind of start this sooner, it's always gonna be an issue, but I don't know, that's the hard part. I guess, I don't know if planning in advance, if we put it out there with this much notice, is it still hard to staff in general?
Well, I think the issue with the staffing would be the fact that it's Thanksgiving weekend. So you
Yeah.
have a lot of officers who might be taking time or aren't gonna be available. That normally takes about, I'm gonna say it's about 5 to 6 officers to properly staff that event. So that means at that time, that particular weekend could be difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I think that without a doubt is a very big factor. So I think that being said, then I would say then the 7th is probably the best option.
How about November 23? Is that crazy?
Well, we said, yeah, that's weird.
I think it is.
I mean, I do think people will feel strangely about having the tree lighting ceremony before Thanksgiving.
I feel like they put up the lights right after
They do.
Halloween.
I mean,
There are a lot of crazy people out there.
it's interesting, I mean, it's an interesting thought. I mean, I'm not fully opposed to it.
Fair.
I feel like, I know it sounds funny, like going back to it if we poll again, but I mean,
Do we wanna, like, normally we don't do this.
no, but we didn't really.
Consequential, but
we
do
don't
we
do-
wanna, sorry, I'm gonna actually
Yeah.
propose something else. Do we wanna put like a little community poll out there? 'Cause it seems like the sort of, thing that they could enjoy engaging with that is relatively low stakes between two dates that we could do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine
As
with
opposed to
that.
picking the date and then having them complain about it.
Do you want?
What are your
the
thoughts,
23rd
Peter,
or
on
the
these
7th?
things? I feel like you don't like me at all. 'cause-
My kids are 32 and 35, so I leave it to you.
No, but what are your thoughts on?
I'm Jewish,
What
right?
are your thoughts on this being a polling thing that we do like a?
I mean, we all have enough to do in
Who's
life
gonna-
at this
who's
point,
gonna
right?
do it
Who's
is the
gonna do it,
question. Like,
then
I'm not,
what do you do when it comes back 50-50 and
Wait, what is the process? Have we done that before?
yeah, we have.
Or what do you
on more
send it out?
substantive matters, you know, like.
Where do you send it out?
Well, we would post it on our Facebook page and, you know,
The poll?
yeah, but somebody would have to like make.
It's just,
and
Well, I can do a poll.
I mean, you want a good turnout for people to like go into the shop, so it would make sense that you would ask. I was surprised at my poll that it was divided on both those days, so. I mean, I'm kind of getting feedback different than I personally would, so it's.
Yeah,
hard to
yeah.
represent that.
well, so look,
I'd be
it's
happy
clear that
I'd
I
be
don't
happy
think
to
it's
leave that.
realistic to do it on Saturday, the 30th.
Correct, agreed. That's
Too
a
much
big
trouble.
factor
Is that a double time day anyway?
Triple.
No.
That's Saturday, no.
But, so I think it's either the 23rd or the 7th, unless we go back to a weekday, in which case it could be.
The Friday or the Saturday.
I mean, I would, if that was the case, I'd do the summer. I mean, if
You like
a Saturday is
better-
what's
better
driving what
than
we're
a
able
Friday.
to do.
Commerce,
Yeah.
okay.
If Friday, we're in the same position, it's still a day after school, people are still getting home
Right.
from work, some people get later, get home
All
later.
right, 7th, are we doing it on the 7th?
Yeah, let's just do it on the 7th and call it a day.
Okay.
Okay, it's the 7th.
So,
Then we can kick the parking
And this
discussion.
is 6 PM, right?
So,
All right,
6 PM?
6 PM.
Okay.
Yeah, on December 2nd, okay.
lighting ceremony is Saturday,
Well, I counted my calendar, so I.
12/7.
Village requirement.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. For anyone who's watching the tape, we are signing off to go into executive session on matters of personnel and real estate. Thank you for your attention. Good night.